our future. We came to this world to reach the stars, to shape our future. We came to feel the need.
You're watching
TBPN.
Today is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. We are live from the TBPN Ultradome, the Temple of Technology, the Fortress of Finance, the capital of capital. We have the current thing hot off the presses. It's Siri V2.
Apple is making moves.
Apple's
finally.
making moves. They are weighing.
They are listening.
They're listening. They're weighing using Anthropic or OpenAI to power Siri in a major reversal. Everyone thought they were going to do it in-house.
Can you imagine the actual like customer feedback that they get on the Siri product?
Yeah.
It's like people try to get Siri to do a simple thing, it fails, and they're just hearing somebody swearing or something while they turn it off.
I hadn't even thought about that. They
It's
could
like, we've heard
transcribe
you
all
loud
of
and
that
clear.
at
We've heard
scale.
you loud, we've heard you loud and clear.
Expletives, yeah.
You guys are mad.
I don't even know if
doing
that's
something about
is
it.
that really. I feel like the expectations for Siri have also been low because it was introduced a decade ago, and it was like the thing that sets the timer and the thing that you ask to get the weather, and that's it. And so people haven't been asking for super intelligence or the ChatGPT like experience, and so
Or even a companion. Certainly
yeah,
not.
certainly
You
not.
You don't hear about people falling in love with Siri.
It was kind of pitched like that, though, back in the day.
Yeah.
It was very much like Siri, we're giving it a human's name because it will be as integrated into your life as a human. And that was the original pitch. And now it's possible, but not possible with the team they have on staff. So they're partnering with Anthropic or OpenAI.
Or they're
Seems
exploring
like a bidding war.
Bit of a bidding war.
Yeah.
And Apple allegedly has been balking at some of the prices being thrown out.
Okay. I haven't really seen that.
Anthropic wants
How much?
billions a year and ramping up over time.
Yeah, what's interesting is that like it could go the other way, right? Where Anthropic or OpenAI could pay Apple like Google pays Apple.
No,
right?
I
If
imagine
the data's valuable.
knowing Tim,
Yeah.
he'll figure out a way to make it a profit center.
I would think so. Yeah, I mean the data.
But the issue is
for
there's real
reinforcement learning
costs to
seems
running
really-
these products.
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like the cost will come way down. And I mean, I believe that the current ChatGPT, OpenAI, Apple deal is revenue neutral for both. I don't think there's any money changing hands, but it's also kind of a mess of a product because you have to say, hey Siri, go to ChatGPT and look this up. And then it pops up a prompt that says, would you like to use ChatGPT? Even though you just said that and I don't understand what you said. And then you have to click yes. It's like, come on, Apple. Like, you know what I want to do.
Forward
This is not the
progress.
future.
The markets like it.
Anyway,
it's up 2%.
Mark Gurman has the story in Bloomberg. We will be diving into that. Said it's sidelining its own in-house models and potentially a blockbuster move aimed at turning around its AI effort. We should go to the Mag 7 market caps to track the horse race of the biggest tech companies in the world. Let's pull them up on the screen and see where people are tracking. So Apple's in third at 3.1 trillion. Good to see that they're over 3 trillion. Stocks up 2% today. Nvidia and Microsoft
Meta
just
is climbing as well, and one of these companies is not like the other.
Meta does
which
not-
is measured in Tesla.
Oh,
Measured
rude.
in the paltry billions.
Congratulations to Apple. 2% up. You'd love to see it. They're up 2%. Yeah, Meta being in 6th doesn't feel like a 6th company to me based on the team and the moves they've made this week, which we will continue to dive into. We have Swix on the show today to break down some of the AI talent moves. We have a bunch of other folks coming on the show today. Talk about that. Anyway,
other news, the Senate passes Trump's mega bill, the big beautiful bill, after an all-night session. They went all night.
I like that.
And it's got to get through the House still, but Elon is fuming.
Play the Ashton Hall sound effect for
he
Elon
is absolutely
coming for the bill.
It's
absolute war on the timeline. The timeline's in turmoil because Elon Musk said anyone who campaigned on the promise of reducing spending but continues to vote on the biggest debt ceiling increase in history will see their face on this poster in the primary next year.
Pinocchio mode.
Liar. Voted to increase America's debt by
It's actually
$5
never
trillion.
been easier to make your enemies look like Pinocchio.
Yeah, wait, but I feel like if you put I don't know, I don't even know who voted for it. Like, let's just say like Ted Cruz or something. If you put like Ted Cruz's face on here, like, are you going to lose the Pinocchio-ness? Like,
AI will find a way.
I feel like it could be a little bit rough. Anyway, Elon's upset. He's trying to start a new party.
The America Party.
He said Vox Populi, Vox Dei. He wants to start the American Party.
And he is pissed because Polymarket is showing that is expecting the reconciliation bill, the big beautiful bill, to pass
70% by July 5th and 62%, 62% by July 4th, and almost certainly by the end of the month.
So this will be the one to watch. They're voting, I guess the first vote is tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we'll be following that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Lots of pork. But if you're AGI pilled, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We are going to be printing at 10% GDP, folks, in just a few thousand days when superintelligence arrives. These debts
we're
aren't
weeks,
matter.
if not days away. Many people are saying.
And so if you're against this bill, you're just telling yourself about your AGI timelines. You're like, I don't really think superintelligence is coming.
Yeah, it is. I think Thiel was generally pushing on Elon a bit in the interview he did last week around like, okay, so are humanoids are going to be important. You're obviously making them. Are they going to impact the economy? Are they going to accelerate growth?
Yeah. This is the post-1970 stagnation. We've been growing at 2%. Satya Nadella is asking the question of, will AI accelerate GDP growth? Because if GDP growth accelerates a lot, it changes the dynamic around everything. Like, not just this debt, which we've been kind of lightly joking about, but also like redistribution.
To Elon's credit, he's also said when he initially exited Doge and just stopped being a special employee, he did say the only way out is growth. So he knows this too. Yeah. But I think he can hold both of these ideas, which is we need to grow, but he's also frustrated.
The Hegelian dialectic, of course. I mean, if GDP is growing really, really fast, you could even keep tax rates the same or lower them and still pay down the debt and do more redistribution. Like, you could be paying people, like you could have like something that feels like a massive social safety net, something that feels like UBI or socialism, but actually tax people less because the growth is so significant. So it all changes when superintelligence arrives.
Baby. Maybe Zoran is just so AGI pilled himself.
That's true.
That he's like, we're going to have plenty.
Plenty to go around.
We're going to have such high levels of production that sure the state can just seize a little bit.
Alternatively, maybe he's a hardcore Bitcoiner, and so if he wants there to be no billionaires, it is impossible mathematically to be a billionaire in Bitcoin because there's only 21 million of them. So the richest you could possibly be is a millionaire if you owned over 5% of the Bitcoin supply, right? Millionaire. So there will never be a Bitcoin billionaire because there aren't a billion of them.
Well,
whereas there are billions of dollars.
Maybe he doesn't want people in the network to vote to expand the supply.
Yes, so he's probably against the expansion of the Bitcoin supply, but maybe he's a hardcore Bitcoiner.
He's a hardcore Bitcoiner that's against inflation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Anyway, in other news, we got to hit that gong, Jordy, for Rahul Vora.
Where's the hammer,
the
John?
founder
You got the hammer?
of Superhuman. He has sold his company to Grammarly for an undisclosed sum.
Nothing like hitting the gong for an undisclosed sum. You just don't know
Could
what's
be a million,
going on.
could be a billion, who knows?
No, but I've
does seem
used
interesting.
Superhuman
You're
for
a super
many years
user
now.
of the
How many? When did
Superhuman.
they really get out? Was it like 6 years ago?
I think it was been older. I feel like it came on the scene like 2018.
I remember I
almost.
was graduating college, and there was this concept that the Thread boys at the time were
Yeah.
talking about luxury software
Oh,
because
and
the
this was
idea
it,
of the idea of charging
Paying,
$30 for email,
a
which
lot.
was just default free. They grew really quickly. Apparently, at the time of this acquisition, they have about 35 million of ARR. Very impressive.
Of ARR. Okay, so that's like what, 100,000 users paying, roughly? Something like that?
Something like that.
Between 100 and 200,000 users paying $30 a month.
Yeah.
Got it. Pretty cool. I mean, yeah, serious business at 30,
Yeah.
at 35 mil. You know, if it's run effectively, could have been, you know, kind of a lifestyle business throwing off a couple $1 million in free cash flow.
Probably could have
clearly
done a lot
wanted to
more
go
than that.
bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah,
way more.
I'm really interested. We should have the CEO of Grammarly on because
that'd
I
be great.
want to understand. So they acquired Coda.
Yep.
That was surprising. Coda was another company that had a lot of, meaningful traction,
Yep.
a lot of fans. It was a great product, but I don't think it was breaking out, right? It wasn't, on a path to being a public company itself or or $1 billion
Yep.
outcome. And then now they're adding Superhuman to the network. I don't see yet exactly how these tools all interconnect, right? Grammarly helps you with grammar in the browser. Superhuman does have some AI functionality. I'm sure, and I know Coda does as well. Unclear to me yet how, if it's like the same user that's going to be using all of these things, if it's truly a productivity suite,
Yeah.
or it's a basket of.
I mean, selling a point solution in the enterprise is hard when you look at the story of Slack versus Teams. Like Microsoft just has so much dominant distribution there. Actually having someone rip out their productivity suite and say, as a company, we're using Superhuman for email and Grammarly for writing and this other product for docs and then not to mention the fact that Notion's running somewhat of a similar playbook with Notion Mail and Notion Docs and then Google has a similar productivity suite. So I mean it's a tall order, but will be cool to see how these different products interact because they're clearly excited about tying them all together in some interesting way.
Yep.
Very cool. Anyway, you mentioned humanoid robotics and there's another player. It's not just Elon, it's Jeff Bezos as well. Amazon now has as many robots as employees in its warehouses. So the number
Let's
of
give it up for the hardworking
robots. Yes.
They
Thank
haven't
you for your
striked
hard
yet.
work.
They haven't striked yet.
The number of Amazon employees per facility over the last 10 years has kind of oscillated from 750, 800 employees per facility, went up to 1,000. Now it's down around 700, down 30% over the last 5 years. That's the post-COVID era. And the packages handled by Amazon end-to-end per employee has skyrocketed over that time from zero to over 4,000. And so the robots are taking over. They're about to cross their 1 millionth robot deployed in an Amazon warehouse. So congrats to Jeff Bezos.
wait
Hope
to
you
hit the
enjoyed the
gong for that.
wedding. Yeah, we should hit the gong for that. Maybe the gong sound
Yeah, I
effect.
saw a post. Somebody, maybe it ended up in the timeline, but
Yeah.
but I'll say it now. It was like a lot of people have opinions on Jeff Bezos' wedding. I ordered a phone last night
Yeah.
at 10 p.m. and I got it this morning.
Yep.
I think he should be able to celebrate however he wants. So I'm happy for him and
Built a huge
Lauren.
business. Very helpful.
And,
This was Tyler
yeah,
Towns.
and even looking at like Amazon puts up over $100 billion a year of profit.
Yeah.
Let the man
crazy.
have a $50 million a year wedding.
A year, not a year.
Not a
One
year.
time.
Hopefully not a year. Hopefully not a year.
He's only done it
Some-
twice.
Some guys get to that stage of life and they just enjoy weddings, right?
Yeah.
And so they just have,
Yeah.
frequent.
There was this narrative around the
Turnover.
wedding actually that, he only invited celebrities because like Sydney Sweeney went and everyone was like, oh, is he really tight with like Sydney Sweeney? Like, and I was saying like, look, he invited 200 people. You're seeing Sydney Sweeney because like if you're a celebrity, like, paparazzi photographer, you're not taking a picture of like RJ Scaringe from Rivian, who Bezos invested in and might have been there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like Andy Jassy, the current CEO of Amazon, probably got the invite, but doesn't get in the paparazzi.
Also, he's having a
photos.
party.
Yeah.
He's having a party.
But you're going to invite your boys, your business.
Yeah,
your business
I'm sure he did.
Right?
But yeah, the media is obviously
media
gonna
doesn't care
fixate
about us.
on who are the biggest stars there,
Exactly.
because they are who drive clicks.
But that's why we need to send our paparazzi
and
to
you
get
know, people
photos
don't.
of Andy
people
Jassy.
That's true.
Yeah,
that would Andy Jassy spotted,
and then it's just
dapper.
yeah,
in
yeah,
Venice.
yeah, and then it's just like Sydney Sweeney off blurry in the left. It's like everyone's like, you missed the most important person at the wedding.
We did not.
No, we didn't.
We never
Andy
missed.
Jassy is the most important person at that wedding potentially, if you win. Anyway, in other news, Commonwealth Fusion Systems, a fusion startup, it has struck a deal with Google. Historic news. We've signed a landmark agreement with Google, a multifaceted partnership that dramatically advances our commercial fusion energy mission. Google signed an offtake agreement for 200 megawatts of power from our first ARC power plant. Google is increasing its corporate investment in Commonwealth Fusion Systems. Google has the option to procure power from future ARCs. The deal is a very strong signal that the world wants clean, secure power that fusion offers. Together, we're catalyzing the fusion market. So there's a couple players in this space, but all the
interesting
AI
use of
companies.
hashtags as well, dating themselves a little bit. They maybe have a veteran social media manager on board.
Maybe more for like the academic
hashtag
world.
Fusion energy. Hashtag
power moves. Because people are searching that. Didn't Elon ban hashtags recently?
But from
in
ads.
Okay, so you can still rip them in hard posts. Yeah. Anyway, beautiful video. Good luck to them.
And if you want to learn more about Commonwealth Fusion Systems, go to hashtag Fusion energy.
Stop it. Stop it.
No, this is great. Super exciting.
So I mean, this is like the flip side of the Sam Altman Helion deal, where OpenAI and Sam Altman, he's clearly thinking about power being very, very important for the long term. Crusoe has been very important in finding stranded energy, building natural gas plants, and helping scale up Stargate in Abilene, Texas. And Commonwealth Fusion Systems is kind of the other side of that, and they're partnering up with Google. So good to see it. In other news, Microsoft claims that their new AI framework diagnoses 4 times better than doctors. And people are kind of putting this in the truth zone. Says Dr. Dominic Ng, I'm a medical doctor and I actually read the paper. Here's my perspective on why this is both impressive and misleading. There were some interesting things where in the control set, I believe the doctors couldn't use Google. So it wasn't necessarily like a current doctor versus the Microsoft AI system. It was like a doctor just completely
sort of acting like a human GPU.
Yeah, just being like completely pen and paper, which isn't really the benchmark that you need to go against, but still impressive. Maybe the 4X is a little overstated.
Because
but
the average
it's still
doctor in the United States, when they're sitting with a patient, is Googling.
They have Google.
The whatever's happening, and then Reddit at the end, and then going to Reddit, and then OpenAI is scraping that.
Yeah.
And summarizing it.
Yeah, but it is cool because now we have a Pareto frontier. We have a graph of the average total diagnostic care per case, how much it costs, versus the diagnostic accuracy. And Microsoft with this team, this is led by Mustafa Suleiman, who in an interesting trade deal was over at Google in DeepMind, co-founded DeepMind, then did Inflection AI and got like acqui-hired in one of those like zombie deals to go to Microsoft. He's now the head of AI at Microsoft, and he has been leading this push that's much more, it feels maybe more Microsoft coded than what Google is doing on the DeepMind team, where Google is focused on like solving these very fundamental questions in science and health. Like, how do you do protein folding? That's not something that you go into like your primary care doctor, say like my shoulder hurts and they need to know how to fold proteins, right? But if you go into your doctor and you say my shoulder hurts, like having an AI tool, basically like a great fine-tuned chatbot that's HIPAA compliant and works within the Microsoft Teams ecosystem to pull the patient records in appropriately, fine-tune on the right data, and then suggest a bunch of things that the human doctor can then go investigate. That's super valuable, and that feels like something that Microsoft is equipped to roll out to the network of doctors and clinicians that probably are already on Microsoft tool sets and Microsoft stacks. So good stuff from Microsoft. We'll have to get somebody on the show to talk about that, since AI in healthcare is all the rage. Anyway, hit that
Very
sound
exciting.
effect, Jordy, as we move to our next important news item, which is that ramp.com is available now for you to procure.
Time is money.
Save
both.
Easy to use corporate cards, bill payments, accounting, and a whole lot more all in one place. Go to ramp.com.
Ramp.
Anyway, we have a fun post here from Vivid Void. Says, I'm literally plotting on your rise, bro. I'm literally up in the lab scheming on beautiful abundance for you. I'm cooking up ways for a rising tide to lift all of our boats. I'm praying for your gains. I'm lighting a candle to your inevitable splendor, dude. GM.
And we mean that from the bottom of our hearts.
Yes.
To all of you.
Well, if you're looking to design a meme like this, head over to Figma.com. Think bigger, build faster. Figma helps design and development teams build great products together, and you can get started for free at Figma.com. Signal had a post breaking down Mark Gurman's analysis of Apple weighing Anthropic or OpenAI in the major power shift in the Siri game. Signal says, absolutely astonishing. Apple used to own the full stack, silicon to software to services. Now they're outsourcing the one layer that will define the next decade of computing. It's a metaphysical betrayal of their own DNA. Anthropic and OpenAI don't need Apple, but Apple desperately needs one of them. This puts Apple under the models it's integrating. Wild reversal. Whoever they choose, they now owe existential dependency to. And finally, if consumers realize Siri does not equal Apple anymore, that it's powered by OpenAI or Anthropic, then what exactly is Apple's IP? Thin shell over someone else's mind? That kills the aura of vertical magic. Do you agree?
It's exciting.
It's certainly exciting.
It's exciting. I would push back and say OpenAI and Anthropic don't need Apple. I would say that OpenAI, sure, they don't need Apple, but integrating deeply at the hardware layer is going to be important. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy Johnny Ive's Love From. They wouldn't spend billions of dollars trying to develop their own hardware device. Obviously, they're trying to figure out what's after phones or what could complement phones. But ultimately, I think it is for both companies, extremely important relationship in the context of consumer, right? Is this going to impact Anthropic's code gen business? No. But will this?
It might. It might, in the sense that if I'm asking Siri to do tasks that require writing code and the models are generating more code, that's more training data, right? Like that example of I took a photo of Pat McAfee. I took a screenshot from the Pat McAfee show and asked, how tall is his desk? And ChatGPT 303 wrote 1,000 lines of Python to go through and calculate how tall that desk was. And then I was able to say, basically, by thumbs up or thumbs down or asking another question, I was able to give it human feedback on whether or not that code path was the accurate, if it got me the answer I wanted. And if I walk away from that, that's a signal. If I ask another question, that's a signal. If I give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's another signal. And so there actually is a world where if you need to test a ton of different real world code generation tasks and is the code that you're writing actually useful to the consumer? The average consumer, the person who's just asking Siri for random stuff, maybe that is valuable. And so I don't know. I'm still curious as to
maybe, but
what is the flow of value accrual here?
At the same time, obviously, are they going to get better, more valuable data from just having tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of developers building on Claude code daily? The other thing is what's completely unclear so far is, will consumers just be talking to Siri and it's still the relationship, just like Siri might be running on some cloud somewhere? Consumers aren't saying, well, Siri's not Apple because it's not their own servers.
Well, Apple does push on that point very precisely
around
because
privacy.
They say around privacy. They say, yes, when you use our models, it is on our cloud and it is super private and it is on device. And
but they can still partner with an OpenAI or an Anthropic and figure out how to deliver that same and value prop. Yeah,
it seemed like a lot of the privacy narrative at Apple was about control of the ecosystem and the ability to really push on the Apple tax and justify it, right?
Yeah.
And maintain that leverage. I don't know. It's interesting.
And also
do you
remember,
think the money
Siri was an acquisition.
Yeah.
Consumers didn't have an issue with that, saying, "Oh, this isn't Apple code.
Yeah.
This isn't
Apple. Homegrown.
This isn't farm to table. This isn't handmade."
Can you imagine if consumers cared about that? It's like, this was technically an acqui-hire, not an acquisition. Oh no, I don't want to wear Beats. Like the earn-out structure wasn't to my liking. Like only one board seat changed hands. I wanted 3 board seats in the acquisition. No.
Yeah, it was telling though that Prakash here has a post.
Yes.
Claude gave Tim Cook sticker shock. I was referring to this earlier in the show.
Yes.
Anthropic have asked Apple for a multi-billion-dollar annual fee that increases sharply each year. Very acceleration pilled.
Yes.
Anthropic.
Yes.
So ultimately, I think that feels like, Apple having a cost center that can scale exponentially with usage is not going to be something they're super excited about, because at the same point in time, they're trying to show we are this ecosystem of software products. Yes, hardware is important, but really, we're growing services revenue. And so if their costs are growing sharply, as defined here, but the surprising thing is, you could imagine a world where OpenAI says, we'll give it to you for free for the first 5 years or something like that, right?
I mean, it could even be that
because if Apple wants to
OpenAI is paying Apple, because if they are able to drop the inference cost low enough that it's similar to serving a Google search, and they're able to stuff ads in it, that would be incredibly valuable. Like imagine if you go to Siri and you say, I'm looking for a new backpack, and ChatGPT can dynamically insert out ads into that response within Siri. That should be extremely valuable. And so that's the current structure that Google has. That's the current arrangement that Google has. It's unclear to me how much different the market will be going forward. I don't know. Anyway, let's read through some of this Mark Gurman report in Bloomberg. Apple weighs using Anthropic or OpenAI to power Siri in major reversal. I'll read through some of this and then I'll want your reaction, Jordy. Apple is considering using artificial intelligence technology from Anthropic, BPC, or OpenAI to power a new version of Siri, sidelining its own in-house models in a potentially blockbuster move aimed at turning around its failing AI effort. The iPhone maker has talked with both companies about using their large language models for Siri, according to people familiar with the matter. It asked them to retrain versions of their models that could run on Apple's cloud infrastructure for testing, who asked not to be identified, discussing private deliberations. Interesting. So, I mean, I don't know that if Apple's cloud infrastructure has a lot of H200s and is ready. I mean, they certainly could not serve 4.5, like a truly large model like
that. Another $100 billion customer for Jensen.
I mean, realistically, like Apple has enough of a relationship with TSMC that they could go and do kind of like, the A3, the Apple Silicon, the M2 chip, the M3 chip, like the M4 chip. They could do a different run with TSMC that's more optimized for inference of large models in the data center context. But it does seem like it'd be a very different muscle for Apple, since they have not been. I mean, when you think Apple's cloud infrastructure, it's like storing photos. It's like iCloud. Like that's probably their biggest service, or like I guess like Apple Music, Apple TV. Like they serve files. They don't do a lot of machine learning inference versus, say, Meta, that already has a $100 billion data center that just does recommendation algorithms and machine learning and inference. It's not fully like a large transformer model, but it is, multi-parameter model for deciding what ads go where and what reels get served to you. So, it would definitely
They're
be a
working
new
overtime to serve you the perfect reel right now.
For sure. And Apple just doesn't have that scaled GPU cluster that I'm aware of. So they'll have to call up Dylan Patel and some folks to get it done. Call up Jensen, maybe. Who knows? If Apple ultimately moves forward, it would represent a monumental reversal. The company currently powers most of its AI features with homegrown technology it calls Apple Foundation models, and had been planning a new version of its voice assistant that runs on that technology for 2026. But it seems like they're backtracking. Switch to Claude or ChatGPT models for Siri would be an acknowledgement that the company is struggling to compete in generative AI, the most important new technology in decades. Apple already allows ChatGPT to answer web-based search queries in Siri, but the assistant itself is powered by Apple. Apple's investigation into third-party models is at an early stage, and the company hasn't made a final decision on using them. Marking a change, which is under discussion for next year, could allow Cupertino-based Apple to offer Siri features on par with AI assistants on Android phones, which you don't hear about that much. I see the Gemini demos on.
Your friends that use Android phones don't talk about how they're
the Lone Ranger's on Android.
the Lone Ranger.
We got one in our group chat. But other than that, it is rare. But even then, I feel like there would be more like viral X posts about cool Android features if they had really done well on the Gemini product, like implementation. And it's just like maybe not quite there. But Gemini is great. The models are really top tier. The Gemini app on iOS is not amazing. Like the text to speech is really, really rough. Like you click dictate and then it will just stop dictating when you pause and then just submit the query.
Yeah.
And so you can be with ChatGPT. I love it because I open it up and I hit that button and then I think and I say, okay, I'm trying to do a research on the Mag 7 and I want to look at Mag 7, their performance over the last decade. So go back and pull what their market cap was 10 years ago and then what it was today and then create a table. But then if I pause, like Google will just submit that. And I'll be like, whoa, no, I wanted to add more and I wanted to give you more context, but ChatGPT waits until I push the button to finish that. And so it's just like minor UI.
Yep.
But that's more important to me than like, does it have 150 on MMLU versus 149? Like I care more about the UX of like, did I just waste 10 minutes by sending like a query that isn't complete and I know I'm going to get a bad answer on?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but again, Android's clearly way ahead of Siri here, so it's not even a competition. The competing project, internally dubbed LLM Siri, that uses in-house models, remains in active development. So representatives for Apple declined to comment. Shares closed up over 2% after Bloomberg reported on the deliberations. So Wall Street clearly likes the idea of one of these deals getting done, but very big question as to the structure of those deals. And I keep triggering Siri because I'm talking about it on my phone. It keeps popping up. Fantastic.
Incredible.
The project to evaluate external models was started by Siri chief Mike Rockwell and software engineering lead Craig Federighi. They were given oversight of Siri after the duties were removed from the command of John Giandrea, the company's AI chief. This was a spicy little trade deal going on over there.
Giandrea, Federighi.
A spicy meatball over at Apple. In Cupertino. He was sidelined in the wake of a tepid response to Apple Intelligence and Siri's feature delays. Rockwell, who previously launched the Vision Pro headset, assumed the Siri engineering role in March. After taking over, he instructed his new group to assess whether Siri would do a better job handling queries using Apple's AI models or third-party technology, including Claude, ChatGPT, and Google's Gemini. Interesting. After multiple rounds of testing, Rockwell and other executives concluded that Anthropic's technology is most promising for Siri's needs. That led Adrian Perica, the company's vice president of corporate development, to start discussions with Anthropic about using Claude. What's interesting is that SSI, not in the conversation here yet. Thinking Machines, not in the conversation yet. And when you think about Thinking Machines, that recent information article about Mira Murati wanting to do fine-tuning RL for businesses, it's like there's very few bigger businesses than Apple. That's a pretty good client to go win.
Yeah.
And so if you have a foundation model, you have to assume she's raised, what, $2 billion? So she can do
Just a pre-seed, yeah.
the pre-seed.
It could be a thing. Apple doesn't really work with a lot of pre-seed companies.
Yeah. They're like, call us when you're like Series C.
I'm sorry, I can't bet my career on a pre-seed, company, but call us if you can get a seed round done.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the fact of the matter is like, $2 billion is enough to do a GPT-4 level run, to do a DeepSeek style run. And so if you take all the best practices from DeepSeek V3 and R1, like the reasoning model, and you spend the money to go do the training and you pull all the data together and maybe you're not completely stealing the data from the GPT-4 API, but you're getting it somewhat legitimately through, these data brokers like Mercor and Scale and whatnot. Like you should be able to get a, near the frontier level model done.
The issue is Apple isn't set up to comp top AI researchers.
Exactly.
Right?
And
so
it's a skill issue.
in some ways, it's
not a money issue.
They're not willing to spend the money to put together to say, hey, we're getting kind of cooked in AI.
Yep.
We should spend $5 billion like Zuck just did to put together, an incredible team.
Yep.
But they'll have to pay for it by, it sounds like they may end up paying annually to get access to the technology that those types of teams
It's crazy.
built.
Yeah.
And so you got to pay for it somewhere.
It's the CapEx OpEx switcheroo. The CFO is like, okay, yeah, like we don't want to spend a bunch of money up front to reap this reward endlessly, but we will pay $1 billion a year, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
They seem not fully AGI-pelled over there. The Siri Assistant, originally released in 2011, has fallen behind popular AI chatbots, and Apple's attempt to upgrade the software has been stymied by engineering snags and delays. A year ago, Apple unveiled new Siri capabilities, including ones that would let it tap into users' personal data and analyze on-screen content to better fulfill queries. I do wonder if Apple is thinking about thinking machines. You have to imagine that Zuck is thinking about buying the company, right?
Sure, they talked.
It's only a couple $1 billion, and by all accounts,
I think to be honest, it sounds like Zuck had offered somewhere around the last private market valuation for SSI.
Yep.
And he probably, even though all the investors had a 1x pref,
Yep.
right? He probably needed to do that to get
Yeah.
at least the early investors comfortable with it. So,
But Ilya is a true missionary, true believer, wants to take the straight shot to SSI. He doesn't
likes
care about
optimizing
Ilya
business
doesn't care
processes.
about the debt ceiling. Let's put it that way. Mira, on the other hand, is doing reinforcement learning for businesses. So you
She's a
throw
businesswoman.
a $15 billion acqui-hire her way with that team, maybe it gets done. I don't know. If I'm Apple, let's pull up the Mag 7 market cap again. What are they at? 2 trillion, 3 trillion? They're up there. And Apple is, it feels like they could afford even 15 billion for thinking machines.
sure.
Do you disagree?
No, I mean, they totally could. But they'd be looking at it as talent acquisition, I think.
Yeah.
Because the team is, it's such a young company.
Yeah.
And
But if you were in the big man seat,
but
and you
then
were trying to
so
cook,
you would do that.
what would you do?
You think Mira is going to be cool just clearing 74 million? She's not going to make more than Tim. You think she's going to be down to sell now and then just have total comp less than the average AI researcher going to Meta?
I don't know. I mean, the beauty of an acquisition is that like you can be structured to make more than the CEO, at least in a short amount of time. Like that certainly was the case with the Beats acquisition, right?
Sure.
Like for those years when that earnout was active, they made more than the CEO.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Anyway, people with knowledge of Apple's AI team say it is operating with a high degree of uncertainty and a lack of clarity. With executives poring over a number of possible directions, Apple has already approved a multi-billion-dollar budget for 2026 for running its own models via the cloud, but plans for beyond that remain murky. Still, Federighi, Rockwell, and other executives have grown increasingly open to the idea that embracing outside technology is the key to a near-term turnaround. They don't see the need for Apple to rely on its own models, which they currently consider inferior. And this makes a lot of sense because Apple is not great at software that needs to be updated, 25 times a year. We're in this crazy AI model horse race. You don't want to be waiting around for, like at the next WWDC, they're going to improve it when Sam Altman shipped like 25 updates.
Sam's going to have 40 buzzy announcements between now and then.
Exactly. And so you
I
want
looked
to
it
be
up.
riding
So
those.
Beats was Apple's largest ever acquisition.
Yes.
Paid $3 billion, including $400 million of Apple stock. Mm-hmm. But Beats at the time was doing $1 billion of annual revenue. So they only paid like a 3x revenue multiple.
Wow,
and
that's a low multiple.
Intel's modem business,
which
was in 2019 for $1 billion.
Okay.
And
it was doing $2 billion in revenue, probably.
Probably.
Yeah, you look that up. I'll keep reading. They don't see the need to rely on the own models. Licensing third-party AI would mirror an approach taken by Samsung. While the company brands its features under the Galaxy AI umbrella, many of its features are actually based on Gemini. Anthropic, for its part, is already used by Amazon to help power the new Alexa Plus, which I haven't seen rolling out into the Amazon Alexas. Maybe the Alexas aren't wired up properly and you have to get the next batch, the next revision.
Yeah,
but
so Intel's modem business was doing it over a billion.
So less than a
well.
1x revenue multiple.
Yeah, basically a 1x.
Okay.
And you remember in 2018 they acquired Shazam.
Oh yeah.
For $400 million.
How much were they doing?
I gotta ask you.
Okay.
I gotta. This is
In the future, if its own technology improves, the executives believe Apple should have ownership of AI models, given their increasing importance of how
What do you think
products
Shazam's
operated.
annual revenue was at the time of acquisition?
I want to say 80. How much?
Waiting.
The company is working on a series of projects, including a tabletop robot and glasses that will make heavy use of AI. I'm really excited for the Apple tabletop robot. That doesn't get enough coverage these days. I think that's a really cool idea.
So
Be fun.
Apple
Yeah.
paid $400 million. The app
Okay.
was pulling in roughly $38 million a year.
Oh, so over 10x revenue multiple. Okay.
So, anyways, not a long history of making massive acqui-hires.
Yeah.
Actually, no history at all.
Well, whatever
But-
Apple's planning, they got to do it on Linear. Linear is a purpose-built tool for planning and building products, meet the system for modern software development, streamline issues, projects, and product roadmaps.
If Apple wants to be more like OpenAI,
Yes.
one way they could do that is by getting on Linear.
Yeah,
Because
they could.
OpenAI uses Linear.
Oh, here we go. We get to thingy machines. Apple has also recently considered acquiring Perplexity in order to help bolster its AI work. It also briefly held discussions with Thinking Machines Lab, the AI startup founded by former OpenAI Chief Technology Officer Mir Murati. But nothing really more than that in the story. Apple's models are developed by a roughly 100-person team, maybe too big. Who knows? Maybe 50.
It's a lot of pizzas.
A lot of pizzas. Run by Ruming Pang, an Apple distinguished engineer who joined from Google in 2021 to lead this work. He reports to Daphne Luong, a senior director in charge of AI research. Luong is one of Giandrea's top lieutenants, and the foundation models team is one of the few significant AI groups still reporting to Giandrea. Even in that area, Federighi and Rockwell have taken a larger role. Regardless of the path it takes, the proposed shift has weighed on the team, which has some of the AI industry's most in-demand talent. Some members have signaled internally that they are unhappy the company is considering technology from a third party, creating the perception that they are to blame, at least partially, for the company's AI shortcomings. They have said that they could leave for multi-million-dollar packages being floated by Meta Platforms and OpenAI.
Yeah, if you are a great AI researcher, the idea of being responsible for just integrating the work of OpenAI or Anthropic is going to be much less exciting
Totally.
than trying to build frontier models.
Totally. And also, like, I don't know, just in terms of missionary work, like the idea of building like the most advanced God that you can talk to in this crazy AI, like that is exciting. But there's also something that's like, I think potentially like a really strong missionary pitch for you're going to build models that are used at massive scale by every iPhone user, and you can actually, surprise and delight the customer to the tune of hundreds of millions of people. Like I think that is actually like pretty laudable work, and very
even
very
going
cool.
to work at super intelligence at Facebook, or at Meta, knowing that your work will be integrated into the Meta Ray-Bans, and you're going to have like a Cluely like experience.
Cool. Yeah.
Just
that's very cool.
Wearing glasses, like that is a cool. That is like a new dimension that you can build on.
I remember the initial Siri build out. They did a bunch of magical things. Like you could say like, Siri, tell me a joke, and it would come up with these like funny zingers that were like tuned to Apple's brand, but still actually pretty funny. And they hired comedy writers to work on it. And so like, I think that there still is a world where you develop the model, you own it, and you're doing the foundational like serious AI research, but you're still productizing it in the Apple way, creating something special. You already hear about this with the Claude is different than ChatGPT, like the vibe test. Like we haven't seen the vibes fork out really all that much, but there's definitely a world where the Apple LLM performs at a similar scale and speed and the reasoning, and it's doing well in the benchmarks, but then you're talking to the Apple model and it has the Apple feel to it, and like that could be cool if you can actually.
It could be so cool.
It could be very cool.
It could be so cool.
Yeah.
Like if they could bring back some of the like flair from the brand campaigns that you remember Apple by 1984, the like original iPod, like these things that were just iconic. Yeah. And if you could think about how to like embody that original Apple, it's
like Steve Jobs' voice, basically. Yeah, bicycle for the mind, and like encouraging that wonder. I keep going back to that idea of like, what would Steve Jobs have thought about vibe coding? And it's like, he would have loved it. He loved GarageBand. He loved giving everyone the tools to be an artist. Everyone's a musician. Everyone's a programmer. Like these things, this giving someone the ability to do really, really interesting things with Siri. Awesome. I think it's very, very on brand for Apple. Anyway, let me tell you about Vanta. Automate compliance, manage risk, improve trust continuously. Vanta's trust management platform takes the manual work out of your security and compliance process and replaces it with continuous automation, whether you're pursuing your first framework or managing a complex program. Anyway,
head over to Vanta.com and tell them the Technology Brothers sent you.
There are some more trade deals in this report in Bloomberg. One of Apple's most senior large language model researchers, Tom Gunter, left last week. He had worked at Apple for about 8 years, and some colleagues see him as difficult to replace given his unique skill set and the willingness of Apple's competitors to pay exponentially more for talent.
That's what I'm saying.
Apple this month also nearly lost the team behind MLX, its key open source system for developing machine learning models on the latest Apple chips. After the engineers threatened to leave, Apple made counteroffers to retain them, and they're staying for now. That's dramatic. Wow. In its discussions with both Anthropic and OpenAI, the iPhone maker requested a custom version that could run on Apple's private cloud compute.
Apple's such an interesting culture because it's counter to a lot of other cultures in tech that are like, oh, I might work at Meta for 5 years and then go to Google for a few years and then dabble at a startup and then go back to Meta. And Apple, you see more of the somebody who's been there for 15 years. Yeah. But then at a certain point, even if you've been there a long time, you're looking around and you're saying people with my exact same skill set are making 5-10 times. Yeah. This article highlights that the Meta pay packages have been between 10 and 40 million annually. And I would trust Gurman more on that. That feels more realistic than what the New York Times had been saying about $100 million signing bonuses and all that good stuff.
Well, the source is not conflicted at all. The guy that hates the fact that these pay packages exist is quoting them. Yeah. It's so funny to source a podcast between two brothers doing PsyOps. It's like, come on, New York Times. Step it up. The company has already internally tested the idea of running these LLMs, other companies' models on their own Apple-controlled cloud services. Obviously, that's very important for the data privacy narrative. Other Apple intelligence features are powered by AI models that reside in consumers' devices. These models, slower and less powerful than cloud-based versions, are used for tasks like summarizing short emails and creating Genmojis. Let's hear it for Genmoji.
Underrated.
Just bake down Ghibli. Have it be a filter in the iPhone app. Boom, you're done. Like, you have a banger product there. Something like that. Just you can go in and make any photo in your camera roll black and white. You can make it Hollywood, teal and orange. You can make it, super moody or super cool or super warm. Like, you can adjust the contrast and the color temperature. Turn it into a cartoon. People will love that. Yep. Everyone will be using that. Apple is opening up the on-device models to third-party developers later this year, letting app makers create AI features based on its technology. Very excited for that. Very bullish for Apple on that. Amazing.
Yeah, which is why the fact that they almost lost the team working on that entirely.
Rough. They need that team badly.
Would have been crazy.
Because if that product stagnates.
I saw a founder, I forget their name, posting, hearing that, the team that you're he was building a product based on MLX. Mm-hmm. And then he heard the MLX team almost left. He was
freaking out.
He was like, whoa.
Oh, no. It's rough. So last year, OpenAI offered to train on-device models for Apple, but the iPhone maker was not interested. They said, we got it handled. Turns out they didn't. Since December 2024, Apple has been using OpenAI to handle some features. In addition to responding to world knowledge queries in Siri, ChatGPT can write blocks of text in the writing tools feature. Later this year, in iOS 26, there will be a ChatGPT option for image generation and on-screen image analysis. While discussing the potential arrangement, Apple and Anthropic have disagreed over preliminary financial terms, according to the people. The AI startup is seeking a multi-billion-dollar annual fee that increases sharply each year. The struggle to reach a deal has left Apple contemplating working with OpenAI or others if it moves forward with a third-party plan. They said if Apple does
it's so
strike an
interesting.
agreement,
You can imagine OpenAI being more willing to strike some type of deal because they want to be effectively the next Google, right? In terms of this dominant consumer internet company. But at the same time, OpenAI is building devices to try to kill, Apple. You can imagine they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
but
they would say it's complementary.
I do believe that consumers, there's like a finite amount of devices that they're willing to have, and so if they want to compete in hardware, it's a little hard for Apple to get excited. Although they partner with Google, and Google has.
I have been surprised by the number of devices that people carry. I mean, like, I'd say like a decent chunk of San Francisco tech people carry AirPods, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, and an Apple laptop basically everywhere they go. That's 4 devices. That's like a lot. Yeah. And then, maybe a VR headset eventually. Well, if they do wind up buying a device, they got to pay sales tax. They got to get a numeral HQ sales tax on autopilot. Spend less than 5 minutes per month on sales tax compliance. Anyway, in other news, John Mew, the inventor of mewing, has passed away at 96 in his castle. Rest in peace to John Mew.
In his castle.
Professor John Mew, visionary orthodontist and founder of Orthotropics, passed away peacefully in June 2025 at the age of 96 in his castle, a pioneering figure in the facial growth and development. John Mew challenged the status quo of traditional orthodontics, arguing that environment, posture, and function, not genetics alone, shaped the face. His philosophy, Orthotropics, aimed not only to straighten the teeth, but help promote healthy jaws, open airways, and confident faces. Though his work was often met with fierce resistance from the establishment, John stood firm in his convictions, driven by a lifelong commitment to prevention, integrity in science, and giving every child a fair chance at full facial development. Today, his legacy lives on through the work of his son. John Mew will be remembered not only as a clinician, but as a courageous truth seeker who dared to ask better questions and never stopped looking for better answers. So, if
never
stop chewing some mastic
mewing.
gum, pour one out for John Mew.
I wonder how he processed the explosion of mewing's popularity on social media.
It must have come as a surprise because it was the last few years of his life. He's been working on it for probably, he's 96. And somebody probably printed out a tweet for him and said, look, some trad influencer has gotten 10,000 likes on your work and 1 million views. Anyway, we have some trade deal news. Ring that gong, Jordy. Mary D'Onofrio has joined CrossLink Capital as a partner and a leader of the firm's crossover strategy. She will be focusing Series B+ venture investments across software categories. Fortune magazine has the story. She was a longtime Bessemer investor, and now she's heading over to CrossLink Capital to cross over into private growth equity deals. So congratulations to Mary D'Onofrio. In other news, Mira Murati's Thinking Machines is offering top dollar to technical talent, much higher base salaries than Anthropic and OpenAI. Thinking Machines will give you $500K. Anthropic, how about a safe $400K? OpenAI, best we can do is $300K. No wonder everyone's jumping ship. I think we're looking at 2 different things here. This is not necessarily for the top researchers who are these star athletes. This is maybe more for just the general folks who are joining as software engineers and developers and kind of members of technical staff. But it is interesting to see that Mira is offering getting aggressive and offering generous pay packages because there's obviously a lot of work and it's a very small team. And even though Thinking Machines has some great AI researchers on board, they got to have some folks to chop wood. And now that Mira is in the business of selling to businesses, B2B, fine-tuning, reinforcement learning for businesses to drive profit, she's got to get Thinking Machines on ADIO. Customer Relationship Magic. ADIO is the AI native CRM that builds, scales, and grows your company to the next level. You can get started for free.
ADIO.com/TBPN. You can try it out for free on us.
So the 462 $0.5K average salary. Thinking Machines Lab offered for technical hires is considerably higher than more established language model competitors Marathi is aiming to compete with. So the competition in AI talent rages on. We will be joined by Swix in just a few minutes to discuss the AI talent wars in more detail. Aidan McLaughlin, who's been on the show, says posts the survivorship bias photo of the plane with the red dots. And this is in response to Benjamin DeCracker, who says the OpenAI brain drain, poaching, by other labs kind of confirms that the smartest minds in AI don't actually believe OpenAI is on the cusp of AGI, but rather that it's going to be a drawn-out slugfest for several years at least, and the economy still matters. In other words, if you really believed that OpenAI was right around the corner from AGI, and once there, AI disrupts the entire economy to a post-scarcity economy, why would you leave that organization right now in exchange for money? It's a good question, but Aidan is, of course, saying that the true believers are still there. They haven't left. It's only the mercenaries that left, and he's continuing.
We gotta have Aidan back on the show.
Get him back.
That was a really fun
He's
conversation.
a great guy. It's fantastic. Also, in other news, they're saying Meta is now preparing a huge pile of cash to acquire Sweet Baby Ray's.
Sweet Baby Ray's.
I would love to see that.
Identified as a potential acquisition target.
Yeah, I mean,
I wonder what their AI talent pool really looks like.
I mean, Elon sells the Tesla tequila. Chamath has tequila. Maybe Zuck. The Meta Sweet. He says he doesn't use caffeine.
Wait,
maybe
I
he
just
just
discovered
likes
something.
Sweet Baby Ray's.
Sweet Baby Ray's.
Bands.
Ray Bands.
Sweet Baby Ray Ban Metas. There we go.
They come with sauce.
Honestly,
in the glasses. So you can get AI.
No. When you're barbecuing, that's the ultimate augmented reality use case.
That's
because
right.
It can take a picture and say, okay, I've set a
check the
timer
temperature.
automatically, check the temperature. How long should this particular steak be cooked? Sets the timer, lets you know.
Starts buzzing, little reminder when it's ready.
This is actually a killer application.
Perfect ribs.
This is actually
you can only make perfect ribs
application.
with the Sweet Baby Ray-Bans.
Well, if you're interested in getting in on the action of the Mag 7, the public companies, head over to public.com. Investing for those who take it seriously. They got multi-asset investing, industry-leading yields, and they're trusted by millions. So Elon Musk is starting a new party. He says Vox Populi, Vox Dei, 80% of people voted for a new political party that actually represents the 80% in the middle. Interesting. So we'll see if he actually does it. There is a Polymarket tracking whether or not he will do it. It has been surging. We will be tracking that. Third parties, not very successful in American history, but
not yet.
We're in a new era. Maybe Elon will chair it. It's unclear if he wants to be the head because he can't be the president because he's not a native-born citizen. So who would he put in charge, or who would he back? Andrew Yang was running a third party for a while, the Forward Party. Do you remember this whole thing?
You remember that whole thing? I do remember it at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, he had the backing of like Sam Altman, some really big tech people, and he was running as a Democrat, and then he dropped out and kind of like was not seen as like an outsider, and then he started the Forward Party, so not left, not right, but forward, and didn't really get that off the ground fully. But
good branding.
Joe Rogan, good branding.
So
I wonder what the Elon Musk. I wonder what the Elon Musk party will be called.
I think it's called the America Party.
Oh, the America Party. Okay, that won't be confusing.
He said he called it. That was his words. What Elon Musk's America Party could look like. Yeah, he seems he clearly hated politics.
Yes,
got out, but he's angry enough about the state of things that he wants to potentially get back in the game. But we're going to have Zach Kukoff on the show in 2 minutes.
Great.
He's going to be breaking down the big, beautiful bill for us.
Great.
What's happening on the ground in Washington. One thing that was included was the Invest America Act, which got approval from the Senate as part of the bill. It's on the verge of becoming law, the first country on the planet to make sure that every child has a stake in the game, real private account ownership compounding in our best companies from birth.
Very cool.
So very, very cool. Great work from Brad Gerstner. And otherwise, we have some breaking news from TBPN, which is that we have partnered with Graphite. Graphite.dev is the website. Let's pull it up. Team. I've been very excited about this. I was a happy Graphite customer at my last company. My entire engineering team was running on it. Graphite helps teams on GitHub ship higher quality software faster. It is the platform trusted by 45,000 developers at top engineering orgs like Harvey,
What
Asana,
companies?
Ramp, Replit.
Love
Who
it.
else we got? We got
Perplexity,
a bunch more.
Harvey, Asana.
Datadog, Vercel.
Datadog?
The browser
I love
company.
Datadog.
DuckDuckGo.
Let's go.
A
I'm a
lot
huge
of
fan
them.
of
But
Datadog.
if you're
Go check
building
it out.
on GitHub, like I'm sure you are, go and get on Graphite. Graphite.dev is the website, and we'll have to have Meryl, the CEO, on the show very soon.
That'd be great.
Very excited to partner with them. And, Tyler will be running our TBPN
Fantastic.
engineering org on Graphite as well. So
Love it.
more to come.
Well, we have our first guest of the show, Zach Kukoff,
Thanks
the
for
stream.
having me.
live from
Mr.
Washington,
Washington.
DC. Washington correspondent.
Mr. Washington. I even set up, I don't know if you can see, that's
great.
the monument right there.
Wow, no way.
There we go.
Beautiful.
There we go.
That's great.
We'll just
Trying
have
to
our
give the
production
viewers
team
a little
zoom in just on the monument, so you won't be on camera.
Perfect. I'll get out of the way, but
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
see the good stuff behind me. That's the important thing.
So break it down for us. The Wall Street Journal has a story. Senate passes Trump's mega bill after all-night session. Tax cuts and Medicaid spending reductions head to the House with a July 4th deadline reachable. What's interesting in the bill? How likely do you think it is to pass? What are the major reads on this? And then we want to get your takeaway from like where the dividing lines are around the bill.
Yeah, so there's a couple trip lines. The first trip line, I would say, you guys have been tracking the moratorium, the 10-year moratorium on AI development. This was on AI regulation. This was the first it was in. Ted Cruz put it in, then it was out, then it was back in. There was a compromise. There was a 5-year agreement instead of a 10-year agreement. And Blackburn has been sort of the key driver of getting it back out again. It's out now. It was done 99-1 in the Senate, almost unanimous in the Senate to get this out. This was a big win for Dario of Anthropic, probably the #1 beneficiary. And by the way, somebody who certainly used a fair bit of political capital pushing for this. That's fault line #1. I would say fault line #2.
So really
Medicaid.
quickly, stay on that. It's a potential ban on AI regulation that was removed. And so the current
Correct.
bill does not have a moratorium on regulation. So it's
There
kind of
is
a double
no
negative.
moratorium on
Okay.
federal regulation. That's
Got
right.
it.
So
Which
you can have
Dario is pushing.
California,
Yeah.
states, whatever, who want to. Marsha Blackburn, her home state, Tennessee, passed last year something called the Elvis Act, which was cutely named, but basically said, look, if you are building like an AI audio business, you cannot use any likeness of a real performer's sound. So if you want to have John singing the blues or Jory singing the blues, I cannot do that without a prior deal. That's because in Tennessee, Nashville is a dominant industry. The music industry is a dominant industry. And so part of Blackburn's opposition to the moratorium, which would have prevented bills like that from taking effect, is that it ended up superseding the work that her home state has done to protect its dominant industries. By the way, net, this moratorium, the time that they got to a compromise was so watered down, it really wouldn't have impacted Tennessee or California anyway. But it was a very dramatic swing from in, and now out once again for good.
And
What do you expect at the state level around AI safety going forward? Is the fact that this was removed going to inspire certain governors to say, make this a part of their platform?
And I guess I want to know more about if I'm 11 Labs and I'm training a voice agent and I can't be sure that some clip from Elvis or some Justin Bieber worked its way in there. Does that mean that I just turn off Tennessee at the DNS level or do some geofencing, or is it more risky than that, where I have to comply kind of at the national level and they're kind of forcing me to comply everywhere, or can I just pull back out of that state? Because we've seen this with Apple Intelligence not being available in China, being available in Europe, for example. But what would the impact on something like that be?
Well, think about states in two categories, right? There are some states that are so large. And by the way, the analog that I would think about here is what happens in the textbook market. So if
Mhm.
you're a textbook publisher and you want to write some textbook about biology or whatever,
Mhm.
if the largest states in the country, it's category one, pass a law mandating something needs to be in a textbook, suddenly you're going to comply nationally because
You
they are
have to.
so large, they warp the market.
Sure.
Exactly. You have
Yeah.
to. That's right.
Makes
And
sense. Okay.
so if California tomorrow says, look, we're passing a European style bill to severely curtail, which I think would be a disaster, to
Yeah.
severely curtail AI development, that would in effect be a national bill.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
part of the, in my view, mistake that's happening tactically right now is this self-imposed July 4th deadline is so restrictive that it forces all of these more nuanced negotiating points to fall by the wayside,
Mm.
right? It becomes blanket, either it's in or it's out. There's just
Mhm.
not time to get to a more nuanced middle ground. So 11 Labs, if Tennessee has the Elvis Act, probably says, look, we just skirt around Tennessee. I don't know, I haven't spoken to 11 Labs, but if California passes, then suddenly you have the whole country warped by this. And Gavin Newsom and the California legislature are certainly ambitious enough to try, as they did last session, to try to pass something that would impact the whole country.
Yeah, wasn't there news out of California this week or last week around some of this stuff?
Yeah, yeah. There was a huge fight, which had an unlikely set of bedfellows where you saw Andreessen and others leading the anti-legislative, anti-regulatory brigade against some other folks who are much more pro-curtailing. By the way, I will just say the other interesting takeaway for tech, not to totally dovetail away from your question, but other interesting takeaway for us, I think, in this is the deciding vote in the Senate on the overall package, the reconciliation bill, was JD Vance. And so if you're a
Mm.
Vance head looking at 2028, right, you already see that Ocasio-Cortez and others, AOC and others, are going to use his deciding vote on this bill, which
Mm.
includes huge amounts of Medicaid cuts that Tom Tillis from North Carolina, in particular, thought were politically toxic, as a wedge against him when he comes
Mm.
and runs for president in 4 years. So
Yeah.
sorry, that was you didn't answer. You asked a question about California, and I dovetailed it back to the federal level,
No, that's
but
super interesting.
that's yeah. That's the big shock. So you asked about tripwires. The AI tripwire was one. Medicaid cuts, which are politically really toxic, right? Because who wants the idea that you voted for the government to take away your health care?
Yeah.
That's another huge tripwire. And then there's a package of things that maybe we care about that are nuanced, like, for example, IRA tax incentives for clean energy, right? Or new taxes on wind and solar from China. These are all things that might enrage the Republican, the very conservative Republican faction in the House, which now has to still pass the bill and now complicates the negotiating posture because the Senate watered down. The Senate preserved the IRA tax incentives and watered down some of the tax cuts, got rid of some of the tax cuts on Chinese imports, which means basically you have a bill that's actually financially harder to pass because it's less balanced. And at the same time, you've now alienated a huge faction of the GOP, the super conservative GOP side of the party, who still have to vote for the bill to happen. So it's up in the air if it passes or not.
Can you tell me about the EV tax credits? I know Americans are struggling more than ever to buy naturally aspirated V12s. I'm hoping that there's some move there to subsidize things like the Ferrari 12
Yeah,
Cilindri, the Dolce Cilindri. It's a
yeah,
multi-hundred
yeah.
thousand dollar car. Even if we can't subsidize that, maybe we can just take away the subsidies from electric cars to tilt the playing field in favor of the larger engines, the supercharged V8s, the twin turbos, the G63s, these types of cars that Americans, deserve to be driving. So, what's the
Sure.
news on the EV credit front?
I agree with you that the backbone of the American economy is the Ferrari, right? It's
Yes.
impossible to me to imagine a world. Thank you for the laugh track. I appreciate that. Where a blue collar factory worker cannot own a sports car is beyond me. This
Yes.
bill doesn't address that. I wish it did. It'd be
Okay.
great
Okay.
if it did. It's not going to solve that huge unsolved problem.
Yeah.
What it will do, by the way, is continue to drive a wedge between Elon and Trump,
Okay.
right? Then you saw Elon take the Twitter. I
Yep.
imagine you guys probably mentioned it earlier. You
Yep.
saw Elon take to Twitter and start to really crusade against people voting for
Hmm.
this. That is in part because at least the House version of the bill was much worse on a lot of the subsidies for electric vehicles than the Senate version. The big challenge is going to be going into now the conference committee. It's going to be how do they reconcile these two challenges so that they can hopefully tilt the market back in favor, of course, of Ferraris and supercars nonetheless, while also not alienating one of the two power centers of the GOP, at least today, in Elon, who could easily primary somebody who votes against.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about how are the Democrats feeling about EVs these days? Because I used to feel like it was a Democratic cause to be pro EV incentive. Let's save the environment. Let's get people out of the gas cars. I'm joking about the V12s, obviously, but now it's become maybe let's punish Elon. But is this a cut your nose to spite your face situation for the Democrats?
I think it's a rough spot. I mean, you guys remember when Elon wasn't invited to the big EV summit under the Biden administration, right? Yeah. That's part of what kicked off his political awakening.
Totally.
Is he hasn't used unionized labor, and so he was excluded from this EV summit. There's been a huge polarization, a negative polarization against EVs among not only Dems in office, but the Democratic base too, which is, to all the points you brought up, quite ironic. You're not going to find many Dems willing to cross the aisle in support of electric vehicles to save this bill. This is a bill that will live or die by Republican whip count and Republican unity. If the whip count isn't there, it's going to be really hard to get it done before July 4th.
What about Elon's America Party? You think that's real or just exciting?
Are those my only two options, real or exciting? There's no door. There's no door number 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. Like we were talking earlier, third parties haven't historically done well.
Well, he has the America PAC. So when you say
that's right,
Elon could primary someone, he could potentially primary a Republican on the Republican ticket with the American PAC, and he could almost like be kind of like a head fake, like, oh, this is part of the America Party, but it's not really a third party. Is that more what we're thinking here? How this plays out?
Maybe one historical analog. It's not perfect, but think about like a Theodore Roosevelt, like a Teddy Roosevelt with the Bull Moose Party, right? You think about it's a faction within a larger established party, to your point, that can serve as an engine to primary people who are in disagreement.
Like the Tea Party.
Exactly. Like the Tea Party, or frankly, what's happening now. Look at Zoran in New York.
MAGA is also like a wing of the Republican Party.
That's right. Yep. MAGA, the Tea Party, and now on the left, the polarization from the Zoran and Democratic Socialist world. All of these folks are new factions in a way that, by the way, we haven't seen before. The same way that 50 years ago, you basically watched MASH on television. That was your only option. And now I tune into TBPN while I play Subway Surfers and have 30 other things hitting me at the same time. This is the political version of that, right? Where you say, okay, it used to be my options were a platform that I accepted wholesale on the Republican side or the Dem side. Now I can be a MAGA guy, I can be a tech right guy, I can be a populist guy, and I'm a new right guy. And on the left, I can be a Democratic socialist, I can be an abundance bro. I have an infinite menu of things. The America Party is more likely, if it sticks, one more menu on the side of the right.
Sure. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
What time? What do you expect out of the next 24 hours?
So tomorrow morning at 9, House Rules Committee votes. That's going to be a key vote to see how this thing does. What I would say is if this gets done by July 4th, the thing that you're going to have to look to is that 9 a.m. Eastern vote to see how much unity is there in the Republican Party. They can barely lose any votes if this thing goes through the House in its current form. But I think it's unlikely that it's going to happen immediately. It'll happen. This will get passed. But on their timeline, I don't know. In the next 24 hours, if you see more senators like Murkowski from Alaska who are saying things like the bill is flawed, please send it back to the Senate so we can work on it again, that's a key indicator this thing may not have the legs it needs the next couple of days.
Yeah, we heard about, I mean, everyone's saying like it's the biggest bill. There's all this pork. Like, are there any like green shoots where there's some random startup out there that's just super excited because maybe it's not a headline grabbing, $10 billion thing, but it's like, that's $100 million that I can go after in energy or in defense or in shipbuilding or anything. Have you seen any of these, like, they're called riders, right?
Yeah. It's a good question. Biden was famous for stacking a lot of these, like the Inflation Reduction Act had a million ways you could go participate. This one's got fewer. I'll say one funny piece of pork and I'll say one actual opportunity. The real opportunity I would say is for fintech folks who are looking at the Trump accounts, right? Which is going to be giving huge amounts of new Americans who are underbanked or not banked before access to capital for the first time. If I'm Robinhood, I am loving. That's a big change for me. Funniest piece of pork in the bill, Murkowski, who was the key holdout in the Senate from Alaska, got a tax exemption for native Alaskan whalers. She said basically native Alaskan whalers need to be, that was honestly big delivery. for
That's great.
her constituency of people who kill whales in
Let's
Alaska,
give it
I
up.
suppose.
Let's give it up for the whalers.
Yeah.
They don't get enough
Yeah.
attention in
Well,
Washington.
I mean, we've talked about
They
this before,
really
but energy is really important for the AI data center race.
That's
Whales,
right.
they produce
Chase
oil
from
that you
Crusoe.
can burn.
Sure,
and
sure.
so-
Wasn't it Chase who said he would burn whale?
No, he didn't
blood?
say he would do it. He said that the hyperscalers
Hyperscalers
are so
would
desperate for energy
if
right
they
now
could.
that they would burn whale
Well,
oil.
it's more fun to think about Chase
Just being like,
personally.
launching Crusoe
oil
for
light.
whales.
Yeah,
Crusoe
that's right.
blubber.
That's right. Well, VCs are the new whalers.
Yes.
They really
and
are.
the old whalers.
And the old
All right.
whalers, that's true.
Zach,
Yes.
this was so much fun.
This is great.
We'll have to have you call in tomorrow or Thursday.
Yeah, when there's more news.
Please,
And,
I'll be around. It's my first wedding anniversary, so I'll be around.
Oh,
Of course,
congratulations.
plenty of time to call in. Thank you very much. I
Fantastic.
appreciate
Incredible. Incredible.
We'll talk to you
All
soon.
right, thanks
Cheers.
for having me, boys. See you soon.
So, yeah.
Bye. Up next, we're going back to the AI talent wars, talking trade deals, talking $100 million offers with Sean Swix. How are you doing?
There he is
Welcome
with the
to
suit.
stream, with the
With the
suit.
suit.
Looking
Oh, I can
fantastic.
see that.
You wore a suit last time, and we didn't give you enough credit because you were at your own conference,
Yeah.
the AI World
but
Fair.
this is a
and
sign
I
of-
would just this is a sign of respect.
great respect
This is
in
a
our
great
culture,
respect.
so
So thank you,
thank you.
thank you, and it's always great to catch up with you. How did you process the news over the weekend? What jumped out at you? I saw a couple of your posts. You were breaking it down, but how would you tell the story? How big is this for Meta? How bad is this for OpenAI? How are you feeling about the trade deals that we've seen break loose
My
over
God.
the last few days?
I feel like people who have been in discussing like sports trades might be way more equipped to discuss this. This is like relatively new in AI land, and like, honestly just like absurd. Like no, like get that back, guys. Like like I'm happy you're getting paid, but like also it definitely feels like for a lot of the AI researchers I talk to, like this is a little bit sort of like a panic move, and in some extent warranted, right? Like I think that Meta has felt like it needs to do something different than what it has been doing, especially leading up to Llama 4. And this is different. This is very, very different. This is something that only Zuck can do. I think
Yeah,
for
so
me,
there was just for some
yeah.
extra context, there was new reporting from Kylie
Right
over at Wired just
oh.
now saying that there's been some back and forth. What are the actual offers?
Yes.
There obviously a lot of them are different, right? It's not just like a set offer that everybody is getting.
If you
It's
join Meta, you get $100 million immediately. The
in
end.
a briefcase, hand delivered.
I don't think that's what's
so
going on.
apparently some of them are up to 300 million over 4 years,
Okay.
with more than 100 million in total compensation for the first year. This is
Wow.
Wired's reporting,
Okay,
right? Mark
yeah.
Gurman was saying
They
it
must
was
have
more
seen.
like 10
she
to
said
40.
she needed to see an offer letter to
But
put
the
that.
funny thing here is there's an OpenAI staffer who was responding to this anonymously, and they said that's about how much it would take for me to go work at Meta. So shots fired.
Wow.
But
I mean, they have
yeah, I
set
mean,
the
it's-
budget, right? So now unfortunately, they have set their own price. It is
Yeah.
public now. I think there was some back and forth between like whether or not Sam appearing on his brother's podcast was
Yep.
like a very calculated move, and
Yeah.
like was he dishonest? This is not my words. This is what
It
Meta
seems
said.
like you might have been honest based on this reporting. Like it seems like
Yeah.
it's real.
I think it's in that ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Like whether or not it's exactly 100 plus minus, like it is at least 8 figures.
Yeah.
And that is like far and beyond what anyone else had been getting prior.
And
basically.
and it is in there, at least in the relative range of what Tim Cook and Satya made all of 2024.
Yeah.
Which is
which is crazy.
Which is
also,
putting-
the 100 million number, it's so round that it just jumps out to you. And I think it's much more viral than 112 or 89. Like 100 is just such a round number. It's such a big amount of money. It's just instant
I think-
generational wealth.
For sure. I think like that's exactly. It's weird that the calculus of like, does this make sense for Meta? Yes, it does, because I think you guys covered my analysis
post.
before that. Like basically, they just cut VR spend and reallocate to AI spend, and they
Yeah.
have the funding. They have the equivalent of Anthropic's entire annual spend.
Yeah, and Meta's at all-time highs right now.
Yeah.
Right? The
stock's
market
doing great.
likes
The market loves
aggression.
this, yeah.
And so it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter if you could move a $1.8 trillion company market cap by a couple points, you're doing
Yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah, Zuck is no stranger to betting like 1% of his company, right? To
Totally.
insure against the future. And he like I think of uniquely of a lot of the sort of FANG or what is it? I think a lot of people are trying to come up with like new acronyms for like the Magnificent Seven. So I like the
Yeah.
one that's Among Us.
Among
Um,
Us, yeah.
Among Us is the best acronym.
There have been
But
some wild acronyms
Yeah,
flying
I know
around.
what you're talking about.
like Zuck is uniquely empowered as like a
Totally.
founder mode of the
Yep.
of the trillion-dollar companies to actually do this.
Yep.
And like so like it's really amazing the leaders he's hired and the people that he's managed to hire. I would say that to one part of your opening question, like how affected is OpenAI? I would have said no, not that affected. You have like super deep bench. Even like the people that you don't really hear about like are
Yep.
actually like fantastic leaders in their own right. And so like in some extent, OpenAI is like very robust to already sort of lead like departures already. But the email from
Mark
Mark
Chen.
Chen over the weekend, I think, was also like, oh, like I wouldn't say that if I were him. I don't know if you guys have the
Oh yeah,
exact
we saw it.
of you.
Oh yeah, that knowing that memo would immediately leak, it felt emotional and defensive versus hey,
sure.
John's phrasing was or at least the way that you said, if you phrase this as, hey guys, we have billions of people coming to our website monthly.
Yep.
We have billions and billions of revenue. We are the category leader in this
Yes.
space.
Yes.
We are doing something different than Meta is doing.
Yes.
And we will continue to dominate.
And
now's the time to
also,
rally.
this is the fourth time this has happened, maybe fifth time this has happened. So we survived Anthropic and Dario leaving.
Don't forget
we
surviving
survived
Elon
leaving. we survived Ilya leaving, and we survived Mira leaving. And there's 4 spin-out direct competitor co-founder companies. This is a couple people leaving. We're going to get through it. You look at the growth chart. We're growing. I would have, definitely gone from a source of strength there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what is your thought on like the narrative that like OpenAI seems Lindy at this point, incredibly resilient, able to lose key people and just keep plodding forward with, iterative releases, models get a little bit better, UI on the app gets a little bit better, deep research comes out. They're just always staying on the frontier, just one step ahead of everyone else in that core chat product. And maybe they might not be able to dominate in, the Claude Code ecosystem immediately. They got to make some plays to make that happen.
They
But
definitely want to, by the way.
they want to, yeah, for sure. But in terms of the core thing that's clearly dominant and huge and like game changing and profitable, like they're doing great, and they should kind of they should lead from a source of strength there because they've been through so much and continue to deliver on that front. And this doesn't seem like a cause for like the narrative around this leaving is that okay, Meta's going to catch up to a frontier LLM, a reasoning model. They're going to have great image generation, but does anyone think that in 3 years' time, people's home screens are going to switch from ChatGPT to Meta Chat? No, I don't think so. But what about you?
Yeah. I don't think so. Keep in mind also, Meta has its own institutional issues with AI products. I think they launched this like AI chat feature where every chat was public. I still think it's still there.
People, that was people accidentally sharing.
Like a box you had to check.
Yeah, people were accidentally sharing it, but it kind of speaks to like, when you're dealing with a trillion DAUs, like you're gonna have weird stuff happen. But yeah.
I would say that Sam would be the first of many people to acknowledge that there's such a thing as a 10,000x engineer and 10,000x AI researcher.
Yep.
But they also have a very deep bench, and it's not just about the bench; it's also about the data. It's also about the infrastructure that they've accumulated. The TM what's their acronym? MSL.
Yep.
Meta Superintelligence is going to have to build up effectively from scratch because effectively Jan LeCun has failed in his leadership of Meta AI there. And I think like that's fine. Like that's a pivot. Like that's something that only Zuck can do. But like OpenAI has a very deep bench, and like I think they are like they're good there. I would say though that It's a really interesting, like how well diversified this landscape is. Most people, when I talk to, there's often, in AI circles, that there's discussion of who has the mandate of heaven. Mandate of heaven meaning they're just like most likely to achieve
Well,
AGI soon.
Swix, obviously.
Of the big labs,
Yeah.
myself excluded, of the big labs, a lot of people are mostly saying DeepMind. Is actually not
Interesting.
OpenAI. So I think like OpenAI is like intensely aware that they're being poached, they're being outcompeted on
Yeah.
on pricing. They're being outcompeted on some metrics like LMSys for DeepMind, and OpenAI is like extremely competitive. Like whenever I talk to them, I'm so impressed that like they're not just arrogance. They're not like resting on their
Totally.
laurels. They're actually just like we will win on every single front.
Yep.
And I think it's just a very impressive company that way.
Then let's flip over. I mean, MSL is it's a cooler acronym than Llama. I always loved Llama because it's a fun name, but it didn't have the same like
It used to be
seriousness.
fair.
Fair.
Yeah, it used to
And
be
fair
fair.
felt also just
Yeah.
like it's a little nice. It's not a hardcore
Yeah.
team.
Now we don't care about fairness. We
No.
don't we drop safety from
MSL is like going to the majors.
Exactly.
I'm
It
in
sounds like
MSL.
Major League LLM and Major League AI training. But I want to talk about the historical analogy because Zuck has been in this position before with the shift to mobile. So when Meta or when Facebook back in the day was a web browser, they initially moved over to an iPhone app, and the iPhone was growing, and they kind of made a mistake going a little bit too far into the HTML5 route, wrapping it in an iOS shell, but they didn't build the app natively, and they were kind of falling behind. But then from 2012 to 2015, Mark was extremely aggressive about acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp, rebuilding the team, hiring some great people. This is when Adam Mosseri and Andrew Bosworth came in and really, really built out monetization in the feed. So they had more money flowing through the system to actually pay for all this stuff. And then
Yeah, we
the
were covering
design stuff.
yesterday the Zuck did a talent raid in the 2010 era of Google because he just wanted to get better at ads, basically. And then he built the greatest ad engine of all time.
Yeah.
It's
So yeah, I mean,
interesting, like,
how are you interpreting like the comeback story and the fact that like Mark has also been here before?
I think that it's interesting how you have like Zuck almost has to fail first, and then he overcorrects and goes really really hard and wins.
Yeah.
In contrast, I think like VR never really had a failure because it didn't really have that much of a success to begin with.
Yeah.
But MSL could only have happened after the comparative disappointment of Llama 4. If Llama 4 had proportionately the same traction that Llama 3 had,
Yep.
I don't think we'd be sitting here today.
Totally.
So actually, this is like net positive that we went through that because they were like, oh, like this, like we proved out that we've tapped out in this direction, and we just need a whole new team, and we need to scale things in a very different way, and probably we just need to poach from the other labs.
Yeah.
So that's what they've done.
What do you think
I mean,
oh, sorry. Yeah, continue.
It's also interesting though that what their current strategy was their third choice, and somewhere in the middle, either first or second choice was Perplexity, and that would have led Facebook or Meta in a very very different direction, more consumery than right now, which is building a lab.
What do you think the postmortem on Llama 4 is? Is it just that they over-rotated towards pre-training, massive model, behemoth, these like, not focused on reasoning, not focused on all the little tricks and tool use and stuff that actually creates a delightful LLM experience or chat experience these days? Or is there something else going on there? Like, how do you tell the story of what they got wrong with Llama 4, if anything?
I don't want to bag on Llama 4 too much. By the way, I put in a thing in the chat for
Sure.
people to compare. Scout and Maverick were great, and then the shenanigans around LM Arena were regrettable, but like understandable, honest mistake, whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems that Behemoth will just never be released.
Interesting.
The assertion, again, Behemoth was never released, so this is all rumors, was that they tried to basically adopt whatever that DeepSeek did for their large fine-grained mixture of experts model, and it just didn't work. They didn't portray it enough, whatever. We will never really know the answer. And I think like there's probably also organizational issues around what data they can use. I know this for a fact just because like
Yep.
I've
That makes a
heard
ton of sense.
issues around like honestly like at a big corp, when your lawyers get into the mix of training data issues, that can get very inconvenient. When I think like comparatively Anthropic, when they won their recent case, they were more like seek bend the laws and seek
Founder mode. Founder mode.
like
Ask for
and,
forgiveness.
like, I think now that
in
we
the
actually
court.
have a little bit of ruling around like okay
Yep.
like pre-trading on copyrighted data is actually transformative use, therefore it's fair use, therefore it's fair game, go ahead. Actually we'll see
Yes, but the case is still trying whether that you need to buy the underlying thing, which could still be egregiously, it could be incredibly expensive to acquire the copyrighted material.
Not at all.
You don't
No,
think
like,
that'll go through?
No. Yeah, whether or not you buy the underlying thing is fine. It's actually just the issue of copyright, whether you have to pay per use, especially pay per inference. Now that issue is out of the
but
way.
I was saying the Anthropic case is still like they had 7 million books that they obtained through that they didn't purchase, and the case is
the pirated ones.
the pirated ones. And so
I mean, that's
it
a
will
different
be
issue.
interesting if labs have to effectively strike deals with publish. I don't know. It's still in the courts.
They are doing that. They probably just should do that. It's a one-time cost comparatively compared to the value that they can extract out of the books. The books are just guaranteed to be underpriced because the books are priced as though they're sold to one person, whereas a model is going to be used by millions. So like there's just no like it's fine, just pay it. The piracy thing is a legacy of Books 3, which is a data set that was created by a let's say someone who was very pro piracy. It was a copy of Books 1 and Books 2, which is actual licensed public domain books. Anyway, so long story short, like I think those cases will be resolved, and like I think that Llama and Meta's strategy there were probably affected by the quality of the data that they had, and the fact that they just couldn't they like sort of they were playing one hand tied behind their back, whereas all the other labs were not.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, this has been fantastic.
Last,
Thanks.
one more question. Any
Please.
reactions to the news that Apple is working with, potentially working on a deal with Anthropic or OpenAI? Anthropic wants potentially billions out of it.
Very, very convenient timing for the open model release, which is rumored to be soon. But like, no reactions yet. I think Apple. There's a lot of news around Apple that never materializes. I think Apple hasn't shown that it has gotten the memo like Zuck has shown. So until it wakes up, like I don't know. I think like around the time of the Apple Intelligence launch last year, I think a lot of people. I was commenting that like basically Apple wanted to be the first layer of intelligence, and then he wanted to route. So he always wanted to keep. Wanted to be Switzerland, wanted to play nice between OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatever other labs, probably not Google. But I think you kind of have to make a bet. I think you kind of have to go all in. Like I'm not that interested in Apple making deals with OpenAI or Anthropic. I still want OpenAI to do an OpenAI iPhone. I don't like the in-ear device. I just wish they just went all in and took Apple on head on, because like all of these are half measures, man. Like we're gonna be sitting here like 5 years from now and Siri's still gonna like kind of suck. Like it's the same deal as like Amazon making a deal with Anthropic for like smarter Alexa. Where is that today?
Yep. No, I was just asking. I haven't actually seen it in the wild. Yeah.
Great point.
This is really
one
good.
more breaking news for you guys.
Please.
I don't know. You guys probably missed it, but Cursor has hired the Cloud Code people from Anthropic.
What do you mean? What do you mean hired? Like how many of them?
I heard they hired the Notion Mail team. I didn't realize that they hired the Cloud Code team.
That's an interesting commentary on what is Notion able to keep its people, because the Notion Mail team was they just launched it.
Yeah, they just launched it.
And now they've left.
Trade deal.
But like Cursor, so Cloud Code developers have been talking about it nonstop. I think people who are like adjacent to developers really pay attention to this one. This is as close as anything is to the new being the new cursor, it is Cloud Code. People are going absolutely nuts and spending a huge amount on it. Anthropic's revenue is up 4x since the start of this year. And like Cloud Code only launched in February.
Wow.
And now Cursor has poached the top two people from Cloud Code, like the creator and the PM. I like it's breaking news, but
I
like
love it.
in
Thanks
terms
for
in
breaking
terms
it.
of like talent trades, this is a really interesting one because it's at the engineering level, not the model level, and it's starting to spread out. It's starting to
Yeah.
be like extremely competitive here, and I think it's very exciting.
Wild.
Well, yeah, we'll have to have you back soon since this is the top story every day now. This is real life. Thank you so much for
great
joining.
to see you, Sean.
Great to see
Guys,
you.
cheers.
Have a great rest of your day. And next up, we have Matthew Prince from Cloudflare coming in to TBPN. Welcome to the stream. Some huge news from Cloudflare. We'll let him tell us the story. How are you doing? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the stream. I would love to start with the news today, and then I want to go into some of the history of the company and when you faced similar junction points and kind of turning points in the past. So why don't you kick us off with the big announcement and the big news today from Cloudflare?
Sure. So about 18 months ago, we started getting approached by a number of content creators saying that they faced a new threat online. We spend most of our days, most of our business trying to fight cyber hackers, Iranians, Russians, North Koreans. And so I was surprised when the new threat was AI companies. And frankly, I kind of rolled my eyes at publishers. I was like, publishers are always complaining about, the next new technology. And they said, just pull the data, look at what is going on. And it was really striking that over time, you could watch as the sort of deal that publishers had made with Google, starting 30 years ago, which was you can copy all of my content and in exchange you send us traffic. That deal just didn't hold up anymore, where they were copying the content, but because they were providing answer boxes, AI overviews, they just weren't sending nearly as much traffic. And that was the good news. As you looked at OpenAI, it was about 750 times harder than with the kind of Google of old to get traffic. With something like Anthropic, it's 30,000 times harder. And the reason why is because people are reading the derivatives. They're not reading the content. It'd be effectively like if I asked an AI system, summarize what happened on the Technology Brothers show today, I have less incentive to actually go and watch your actual show. And that means that if you're making money through advertising, if you're making money through subscriptions, if you're just, getting value out of the ego of knowing that people are watching your show, that's going away in an increasingly AI-driven web. And we worried about that quite a bit. And more as we talked to publishers, we realized there was something that we could do about it because Cloudflare runs one of the world's largest networks. A huge amount of the internet already sits behind us. We could partner with literally publishers, everyone from Adweek to Ziff Davis and everything in between, to say that let's change the way that the internet works, and let's change the sort of model where if you're going to take content, you should actually compensate the content creators for it. And so starting on July 1st, we flipped the script. We made it as a default that if you're using Cloudflare, that you can by default for free block any AI crawlers from taking your content without compensating you. And I think now the hard work begins where we have to figure out now the business model around how we get compensation back to those content creators and make sure that folks like you who are creating real original content can continue to be compensated for the hard work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, we used to joke saying that the labs are welcome to scrape our content because we want to influence the outputs
results,
of the model. But no, it's a serious issue.
essential.
We were covering one of Ben Thompson's pieces about this whole debacle a few weeks ago, and it was funny because at the time we were like, there's so many different stakeholders here. Who could possibly try to figure out a solution to this problem? And obviously the answer, you guys are a key player in this, and you have the scale in order to kind of make changes happen. Can you I guess like break down more kind of like the kind of the market structure between and how you see this actually
I
working
guess
out
what
and who
deals
really
have been done over the past year? Because I know didn't News Corp do a bespoke deal with OpenAI for that exact thing? It sounds like you are more equipped to kind of handle like the longer tail, but also some of the bigger publishers. So talk to me about kind of the state of the art of what those deals look like when they're one-to-one, and then what things might look like going forward.
Yeah, so I think that first of all, I think for some time to come, large publishers will do deals with large AI companies, where there might be places that people need help, or either small publishers or small AI companies, and figuring out what has to happen there. But I think even in the case of places where deals have been struck, what the challenge is someone like OpenAI is paying a lot of publishers for their content and doesn't actually object to the basic idea that they should pay for the content that they're using. But they do object to the fact that they're paying where all of their competitors are getting content for free.
Sure.
Any market that exists has to have scarcity. And the problem, the reason why there hasn't been a market in this space is that there isn't scarcity. And so what changed yesterday is scarcity was introduced really for the first time. And I think the closest analogy is if you think back to, before iTunes launched, we were all downloading music on Napster and, all the free pirate services. That's effectively how the AI companies are taking data from any content creators today. And what you need is an iTunes. You need someone to come in and say, okay, let's provide a way where people can pay for that content and they can go back. Now that's evolved over time. I think our first version of the marketplace will probably be relatively naive and we'll figure it out. No one's paying 99 cents for songs anymore. We've moved to something that's closer to a subscription model like a Spotify. And I think that's what we will evolve to have over time. And if we do it right, I think that we can have a large number of sellers of content, obviously, but also a large number of buyers of content, both the big sort of general purpose models, but then also very specific models. And we've got to make sure that new entrants can come into this market and have a vibrant way of participating and competing. And so I think that for now, most of the deals will be one-on-one bespoke deals between publishers and AI companies. You'll need to have some way of enforcing those deals and making sure that if you're charging someone, they can get access, but their competitors can't. And then over time, I think we'll develop something that looks much more like a robust marketplace where content providers can set sort of what their price is. There can be a bid for maybe getting that content exclusively for some period of time or whatever else. And that's going to develop over the coming months.
Is that the correct model to think that the content producer would set the price? I mean, that's certainly what happens on Substack, and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal set their price. But I've always thought that this might evolve a little bit more like YouTube or like Spotify, where there is a pool of dollars that are going into ChatGPT subscriptions. I personally pay $200 a month, and occasionally I fire off queries that probably land on the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, and I would be happy for them to send 10 cents or $1 or split off 50% of what I'm paying. So you have $100 to kind of parcel out in the pool, and then you see how much inference pulled what data from what sources, and kind of have it all be driven by the same volume like the volume algorithm that you see on YouTube or Spotify. Does that seem like kind of what the long-term outcome might look like, or do we need to also get to some sort of like ad-driven marketplace, because that's ultimately where how YouTube prices these things?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think that there's a lot that we still have to figure out. I last week traveled up to Stockholm to meet with Daniel Ek, the
Nice.
founder of Spotify, and it was really it was interesting. He said the ultimate model that Spotify settled on. I think I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was basically like it was sort of the most naive of all of the different options that he had come up with, and it works as it is a pool of funds, and then they divide it up based on basically how many minutes of content you consume, and there are different rates for music versus podcasts versus audiobooks, and it was fascinating to see. So you could imagine a version where Cloudflare effectively negotiates on behalf of all of the content that sits behind us with the big AI companies. People can opt in or opt out of being a part of that pool. The more content that's part of that, the more valuable it is to the AI companies. And then we would look at how we could split that up across how much crawling is actually done across that. I think one of the real keys will be how can we give hints to the AI companies on what is the content which is the most valuable to them. So, for instance, if Taylor Swift releases a brand new song and maybe does an interview about it, that's incredibly valuable content if you're a I don't know, chatbot for lonely teen girls, right? On the other hand, it's probably not so valuable if you're sort of a chatbot trying to be the world's best doctor. Maybe there's some value in sort of bedside manner, but largely, that's not going to be a big deal in your care. On the other hand, if a research study comes out on acetaminophen's effects on different types of chemotherapy, very little value for the chatbot for teen girls, but incredibly valuable for the doctor. And so what we have to do is actually, I think, on an LLM or an AI model by AI model basis, be able to give them signals back that say this is the sort of thing that you should be paying attention to, that you should be indexing, that you should be actually scraping and paying for. And the same way that in the music industry, we've got reviews, we've got different types of music that people are, that you might be into country, or you might be into classical, and it kind of allows you to compartmentalize that. I think that whole ecosystem has to develop, but once that does, something very much like Spotify could be the right answer long term. And again, I think we're in a unique position to pull it together.
Rudy?
Talk briefly about stablecoins. I remember in this Ben Thompson piece, people have been suggesting this idea that stablecoins could be some part of the solution or a backbone for a new business model for the internet. At the same time, while I'm bullish on stablecoins, someone like a Cloudflare can set up the infrastructure to just use traditional financial rails to process payments. So I'm guessing that it's not part of what you're...
This was Ben's reaction to the original sin of the internet was advertising, and this idea that Mark Andreessen, when he built the browser, didn't build in payments because it was this multi-party discussion to figure out how to actually integrate payments into HTTP. Didn't happen. The first MCP spec, that's the Model Context Protocol spec for AI agents to interact with each other, doesn't include payments, but he was kind of saying that it might be on the horizon, but would love your take.
Yeah, I think the answer doesn't have to be 100% one or the other. And so I would guess that there are going to be very traditional financial rails that will be ways to pay people out. But there will also likely be something that is blockchain based or stablecoin based. And again, I think we're looking at all of the different providers that are in this space, including potentially creating our own stablecoin that would be part of how these transactions take place. And I think you're exactly right that there's a natural extension from what we're doing here to how we figure out around what the payment rails look like for MCPs. Because as your agent is going around interacting with things, that's also going to be something that is either charged for or that you actually get paid to do. And there's got to be a way for those transactions to take place. And to the extent that you can reduce the transaction costs for those transactions as far as possible, then that's a pretty interesting way of being able to process very high volume, low dollar amount transactions. So I think that's right. My only one quibble is that I think that the original sin of the internet is not that it didn't include payments; it's that that there was no privacy built into it, and your IP address reveals far too much about you and who you are. We don't even have to get to cookies, but that's
another story.
We totally can.
What about we've talked about content creators, publishers. What about the apps of the world, the Ubers, the Instacarts that actually have really meaningful advertiser businesses built on top of them? Do you expect there to be any type of this functionality rolled out to them over time, or is that something you think they're thinking about quite a bit? Because if I can go into ChatGPT and that's my default daily assistant, let's say in a few years from now, and I'm like, hey, order me groceries and order me this Uber, I'm not in the app seeing ads potentially, being upsold, and that could be a problem for those types of companies.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, robots don't click on ads, and so the sort of model that part of the revenue stream to support these services has to come from somewhere. And if today, Uber is able to monetize the time where I'm waiting for a car to come by showing me an advertisement, that means that they can effectively charge me less for the ride. And so it may be that if that ride is booked through an agent instead, and they don't get that advertising experience. And again, I don't know enough about Uber's business model to know how important that is to them. But if they don't get that, then maybe it is that there's some sort of premium that an agent booked ride receives versus a human booked ride. And again, I think that's just we've got to figure out what that looks like. I think that's going to be less up to Cloudflare. I think it's going to be, our job will be how do we provide those payment rails? How do we provide the systems? How do we make it so that we can have guardrails on as agents interact with applications that are there, that you as the application provider can set those rules and controls, and then agents can interact within that system. And MCP is sort of the leading candidate for providing that. But you're right that it's a sort of draft version of that specification, and there are a lot of things that have to mature in order for that to be something that is the real kind of agent to agent system that runs that is likely to run what will be an increasingly AI driven web.
Yeah. Can you talk about any previous crucible moments for either Cloudflare or just like the internet history broadly? This feels like a moment where you're potentially trying to, deal with a shift in the overall internet structure or the incentive structure, but it's a reaction, but it's also an action that should reshape the relationship between different parties on the internet. Are there different moments in the history of Cloudflare or the history of the internet that you think we could draw on as historical analogies to learn from to see how this might play out?
I think that that Google really 30 years ago defined what was the business model for the web, which was you create content, search drives traffic, and then you monetize that content through advertising or subscriptions or ego. And ego and monetization, not quite the right thing, but you derive value from it in one of those three ways. And that's held up for the last 30 years. I think that this is the first time that I've seen something where I thought, wow, there are really going to be very, very, very fundamental changes to the structure of how the internet works if we move from a search-driven model to an AI-driven model. And I think that what I hope is that we can actually make this something where what gets rewarded is not what gets rewarded today, which largely is, who can write the headline that produces the most, sort of inflammatory response in all of us, who basically drives the most cortisol, gets the most clicks and therefore the most ad revenue or the most subscriptions. Like that's not a healthy way of looking at the world. I think, the alternative is if you imagine that kind of all of the AI models together are a good kind of assemblage of an approximation on human knowledge. If we can identify where the holes are and then create incentives for content creators to actually fill in those holes, that actually is going to move humanity forward. It's going to make the AIs better. It's going to be a much more interesting thing, and that's I think how we're going to be creating it. I can't think in the last 30 years of as seminal a moment. I think there are some things that are along the way. I think 2016 was a big turning point year for a lot of reasons. It was sort of the year that it went, technology went from being able to do no wrong to being able to do no right. And sort of rise in populism around the world. You have Brexit in the EU. You have the first Donald Trump election. You've got Xi and Modi consolidating power in Asia, the Filipino election. And I think that was a point in time where, also driven by Snowden shortly before that in 2015, that a lot of the world lost faith in kind of the U.S. model of internet governance. And it wasn't quite ready to adopt the Chinese model, but that's definitely been a shift, which is substantial. And I think we're still watching that play out. That I think is probably still remains the biggest threat to the overall internet. But this shift to AI as well, again, I think is a real challenge, but it's also an incredible opportunity. If again we can make the rewards incentives for content creators not be who can produce the most cortisol, but who can produce the biggest sort of incremental improvement in human knowledge, that'd be an incredible win, and something that I don't quite know how to get there yet.
Yeah.
But I think yesterday or today, and we took in July 1st, we took a real step in moving in that direction and making sure that content creators can be compensated for really producing information which is valuable to advance human knowledge.
What do you think about the future of investigative journalism? There's been a big shift in just content creation into independent creators, but a lot of that is actually downstream or separate from the type of work that investigative journalists do. I'm thinking of like Seymour Hersh hanging out at a local army bar for a year before he gets one scoop that he can write a book about, and these investigative journalists, they tend to, John Carreyrou was on the payroll of the Wall Street Journal for years. He was writing stuff, but then he blows the Theranos case wide open, eventually a book and then a movie. And I imagine that with artificial intelligence, the value of a scoop could actually go up because you could use an LLM to read through the clickbait repurposed version of the article to find, wait, they're sourcing actually, this person posted it on the internet earlier. They're the one that actually did the hard work to get the scoop. They should get 90% of the value and 10% should go to the repurposed rage bait version, as opposed to the economic model now, which is maybe you get 90% more clicks on the viral, repurposed content, and the scooper actually gets 10%. Do you think that's possible, or how do you think that investigative journalism will evolve?
Yeah, I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but it's I thought it was interesting. As I said, I met with Daniel Ek up in Stockholm, and he told me, he said, we were talking about this, and he said, one of the things we do at Spotify is we actually surface all of the different queries that are sent to Spotify that we don't feel like we have a really good response for. So if somebody searches for, I want a song to a reggae kind of beat and it's all about how much it sucks when your sister steals your car and your dog.
Not to get too specific.
I'm not. Again, I don't know what these things are, but they're musicians who take this list and they actually write songs based on what people are looking for.
No way.
And that they make tens of millions of dollars a year doing just exactly that. And there's something about that I think is really beautiful, as opposed to the alternative of just, just trying to do a little of more Me Too of what everybody else is doing, like taking a different twist, using signals from the market in order to go find that. And so, again, that's not investigative journalism by any means, but I think it is actually advancing kind of the sort of good of humanity, where it's taking a place where there's a missing need and it's filling that missing need. And so I am hopeful, and relative. I mean, I'm a relatively optimistic person, and I'm hopeful that if we get this right, that we might be on a golden age of content creation, where people actually are rewarded for doing things that advance human knowledge, as opposed to just doing things that produce as much cortisol as possible.
Yeah, the idea of a knowledge bounty, right? It's like, hey, there's groups of people or a single entity online that will just pay you to produce really high quality information around this specific topic. Yep. And the internet always did this sort of organically, but it would just be somebody spinning up a blog or maybe an Instagram account or something like that, and they would just start blogging about something that was niche, and then an entire network would form around it and other people would contribute to it. So I think there's quite a lot of precedent. But it would be exciting to put that reward out before, and not saying, hey, you have to do this and then maybe you'll get some ads associated with it later. But basically the pool of capital is here, and you just have to deliver that knowledge that people already want, and we know it because they're searching it on LLMs and things like that.
I throw you?
I think I'll tell you the sort of Black Mirror kind of dystopian outcome if we don't get this right. Which is, I don't think journalism goes away. I don't think that research goes away. But you could imagine a world in which we go back to something kind of like the Medicis, where there are five big AI companies, and they basically employ each of them, all of the journalists, all the researchers, all the academics, to be able to do the research to feed their systems. Because you're still going to have original content.
Yep.
People are still going to have to be able to produce that in order for the AI systems to, fill in the holes in their kind of effective block of Swiss cheese, that is their model. But I think that's a pretty bad world where again, because you then probably have like the conservative AI and the liberal AI, and I mean all these things that the internet kind of broke apart. You could imagine AI as a system that is just this massive consolidator in the future, and I think that's a bad outcome. And I think a better outcome is if we can figure out how can we reward people for again driving knowledge, but not get to a place where all of them have to be employed by one of the five, big.
I actually talked to somebody very high up at one of the AI labs who said that was saying that like if you take the total salaries of all the journalists in America, it would be a fraction of what the AI labs are spending right now just acquiring data. And so it's not a financial question. It is a political, cultural question. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I
But that's
have one
that's
follow-up.
also the argument why I think that, and I've been really positively surprised as because we've talked with all the big tech companies, all the AI companies about this, and they all like with maybe one or two very small exceptions, they all say yes, we understand over the long term we have to pay for content, and so they get that. What's key though is it has to be a fair playing field. And that fair playing field, everyone sees that slightly differently. So if you're a new incumbent, you want to say, well, Google can't be advantaged. If you're Google, you have to say, well, we have to be respected for the ecosystem that we've helped build and flourish, and we should be able to, do this thing. And so everyone's got a slightly different take on this. But I'm actually encouraged that the dollars are there, that there is an acceptance that this is something that needs to happen, and that if you ask them, everyone says yes, we need to do this as long as you can create a level playing field. And again, that's where I think our role comes in: is how can we create that level playing field? How can we create scarcity? And then how can we make sure that content creators are being compensated for the hard work that they're doing?
Yeah.
Zooming out just for a second, what is the state? How's the internet been for the last few weeks? It's been a busy last month in geopolitics, and I know that makes your job a bit harder, or at least I would imagine things get a little bit busier.
Keeps it interesting. I mean, it's whatever you see sort of in the sort of kinetic side, the physical side of a conflict is usually replicated in the cyber side of the conflict. And so, we, as the hostilities ramped up between Israel and Iran, first of all, we saw very clear signals that something was coming ahead of time, which is it's interesting how there's sort of a digital residue, which shows when there's going to be kinetic action taken. And so we were watching that pretty carefully. Big attacks targeting both Iran. One of Iran's largest banks was hacked by what looked like a group of Israeli hacktivists. The largest cryptocurrency exchange in Iran was hacked and all its funds were drained. Again, looking like it was either by the Israelis or Israeli sympathetic attackers. Iran has tried to do the same thing against Israel. Israel's cyber defenses are much stronger, but we're starting to see that Iran is targeting other largely U.S. Financial services firms, critical infrastructure firms, to try and strike back from what is how do they strike back against the U.S. in a way that is harmful but doesn't start World War III. And I think that increasingly, unfortunately, cyber will be a big piece of that. And so we're doing everything we can to stay in front of that, make sure that anyone who needs it has protection, and that we can keep the lights on everywhere in the world.
last question from me.
Go for it.
There's a number of larger overarching tech narratives. I'm interested in if you're losing sleep over any or tracking any in particular focus. The AI talent wars and kind of pay inflation for top performers, is that an issue or something you've been tracking, or the difficulty to build larger data centers and infrastructure, the GPU shortage, the chip wars, any of those topics kind of particularly relevant to you or your business, or kind of keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I think we're not trying to build a foundational model LLM, so we're not as much competing for the bleeding edge AI researchers. I will say that I've been really amazed at both from an academic side and then also just pure talent side, how many people are interested in working on that problem of something like how do you score content in order to be able to create a marketplace, and so that's something that's been pretty exciting. We're very excited about the people who are coming to apply to work for Cloudflare to work on problems like that, and like today has been a record applicant day for us.
That's awesome.
On the
Congratulations, record.
Sorry,
record
I hit the air horn for you on the
We're
record
excited.
applicant day.
But it's good. It's good news.
And then I think we tend to put a little bit of equipment in a lot of places, and so that we don't tend not to have kind of massive
you're not running into like power
gigawatt
constraints or rare earth element constraints or water right constraints.
We do, but in kind of a micro way where we put GPUs at the edge of our network. We have to live with a power envelope that we're given by an ISP, and so we're doing things to try and figure out how to just get the best power efficiency out of the GPUs that are there. The answer to more and more need of GPUs can't be everyone has to turn up their own nuclear power station. So I do think the place where we're pushing suppliers, and AMD is doing some really interesting things in this space, Qualcomm is doing some interesting things in this space, the fruit company down in Cupertino is doing some interesting things in this space, are how do you focus on, yes, performance, but performance per watt. And we've seen this game before with Intel saying, oh, that doesn't matter. Like just get the most performance possible. You can water cool things, all kinds of things. That tends to not be the winning strategy over the long term. And so we do think that there will be a renewed focus on just energy efficiency around GPUs, and we're really pushing that in a way that because again we can't build our own data centers in the business that we're in. And then chip shortage. The chip shortages are funny. Like there's never been a chip shortage in any time in the history of silicon that doesn't turn into a glut. Because it's
but this time it's different.
Yeah, this time it's totally different. So I think you're going to see both. You're going to just see shifting demand that's there, and a lot more. NVIDIA is not going to be the only chip supplier of GPUs. There are some really, again, great other providers that are out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for stopping
really
by.
Enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah,
Congrats on the
we'd love to have
launch, and come back on again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
Congratulations.
having me on.
Good luck
Cheers.
filtering through all those job applicants. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye. Really quickly, I got some breaking news. The best performing AI agent now comes with a $1 million guarantee.
That's right.
Fin.ai, the number one AI agent for customer service.
Number one in the world.
Number one in performance benchmarks. Number one in competitive bake-offs. Number one ranking on G2. And you can start a free trial.
With Fin.
You don't want to be baking off with Fin.ai.
From Intercom.
Head over to Fin.ai to get started.
I'll be right back.
And
You'll kick it off.
yeah,
with our
we'll
next
bring in
guest.
Luca from Pudgy Penguins. We're going to talk about what's going on with the market structure bill, what's going on with the Genius Act, what's going on with his business. So we're very excited to catch up with him. It's his second time on the show. He came on during Crypto Day. Fantastic conversation. And now we're excited to have him back on to talk about the state of crypto. How are you doing, Luca? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. What is that behind you, the igloo? Is this part of the Pudgy Penguins expanded universe?
Yeah, the holding company that holds Pudgy Penguins, Abstract, and a couple other companies we've yet to announce that we've acquired is called Igloo. So everything
nice.
Lives within the Igloo.
That makes sense.
There you go.
Is anyone riffing on the meme of like selling ice to an Eskimo yet? I feel like that's, I know that you're good at doing deals with old line retailers, but can you sell ice to an Eskimo?
I can sell ice to an Eskimo. I can sell fish to a penguin. I
That's
can
good.
sell land to a mammal. We can
Yeah,
sell
what
it
is
all
what,
here.
what is the latest? I mean, we caught up on Crypto Day a couple months ago. What's the latest in your world? How are you feeling? I mean, we've been in this kind of kangaroo market for the high level L1s. Prices are up, prices are down. Everyone's kind of waiting for the next big crypto catalyst, but maybe that's the Genius Act, the Market Structure Act, maybe that's legislation. But what else are you tracking? Stablecoins have been really hot with the Circle IPO. What's been top of mind for you?
Yeah, our big thing at the Igloo is actually like we feel like we are one of the most well-positioned organizations for consumer and culture in crypto.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually a little fascinating because I actually felt like I missed a piece in terms of what I felt like was needed for this consumer crypto revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really prevalent around this Genius Act, which is I think you're going to see crypto break through mass off the backs of stable coins.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at all of the consumer crypto applications and really their barrier and bottleneck, I thought it was product builds, and I do think that is true to a certain extent, but I think the product builds are a byproduct of the current environment that rewards builders for building in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gets completely flipped on its face when average consumers are now transacting in dollars that are on chain. It opens up a whole new vertical of product builds that I think are more oriented around maybe providing a service or an experience and not providing a scheme to return your dollars two or threefold as like a financial mechanism for you to kind of speculate on.
Yeah.
And so I think like the Genius Act is quite literally going to kick off the consumer crypto revolution. And that is really apps that are built around, I think, the best properties of blockchains, which is like on its face. I think a lot of people listening, specifically around your audience, like maybe look at blockchains as like maybe speculative vehicles or
Sure.
like programming languages. But I think the best frame to look at it as is like a blockchain is a censorship resistant version of a Stripe or a PayPal
Mm-hmm.
that taps into global composability and global liquidity, which basically means that like anybody with an internet connection can transact, using these payment rails without some sort of intermediary. And that at scale, if you actually understand like consumer product builds, every guy that I know that's building an AI or building consumer product goods at one point has had their account locked up or their funds withheld or are paying a huge premium on these transactions, whether it's 3%, in some cases 5 to 8% if it's a higher risk product. And I think this, blockchain is very useful when you think about removing that middleman for those applications. I think we've just been pigeonholed as an industry around like these builds that are solely around speculation
Yep.
and making the end user more money, right? Like I
Yep.
go buy this, I should return a 2x or a 3x or a 5x. And I think we're slowly transitioning into more traditional builds where it's like, hey, consumer crypto is really around this idea of removing these layers that I think today make it so hard to build, fun and robust applications that are, segmented either from a geography perspective, whether it's certain regions, et cetera. And I think it's kind of transitioning to like more real product builds that I
Mm-hmm.
think more serious entrepreneurs are interested in. So the Genius Act, I think, is going to change everything because
Yeah.
the floodgates for stablecoins are here. And I think that was the missing piece to the consumer crypto revolution that I think crypto very much desperately needed.
Okay, I want your reaction to this older analysis by Ben Thompson during the first NFT boom, where he was talking about the value of NFTs as a disintermediated membership program, essentially. So basically, the link I see to stablecoins is if you have a community and you're a creator, you might not want to have someone have a super fluctuating financial interest in your community. And so when I think about the folks who are big on Patreon and it's $5 a month or $10 a month, but when I pay $30 a month for the Wall Street Journal. I get access to WSJ.com. I can comment there. There's a bunch of other things that you could imagine, but I can't really go around the internet and carry my Wall Street Journal login to their YouTube account and get custom YouTube videos. Like the videos have to be embedded on the Wall Street Journal website. So it can't really follow me around the web. And Ben Thompson was talking to Adam Mosseri at Instagram about this idea that Instagram might be open to a bring your own membership type of integration with Web3. And so I think that we were almost there, but there was no one that really broke out into mainstream adoption where both you got to get YouTube and you got to get Instagram to say, yes, we are integrating this membership card as a native, as a primitive on our platform to allow, creators to create, subscription level content. Instead, we wound up with every social media app has their own subscriptions. So I can go get YouTube premium subscribers who subscribe to me, pay me $5. Then on X, I can have subscriptions, $5. They subscribe to me there. But you got to follow me around. You can't just subscribe to me as the creator. That felt like something that Web3 could do, but we weren't quite there with stablecoins. Is that something you think is a reasonable dynamic that could play out post Genius Act? Is there still some sort of countervailing force where the big tech companies might just not want to give it away because, hey, they're earning a cut on those membership revenues directly? How do you see that playing out?
They're definitely not going to want to give it away, right?
Yeah.
Like those guys are pretty good at capturing and trying to keep revenue. I think like one of the big, bull cases around Web3 is like these universal logins and identities, right? That like follow you all over the internet.
Yep.
Like that's going to take a lot of pieces to put together, but like things like the Genius Act, right? And everyone transacting in stable coins makes that so much more possible and feasible. That I don't know of anyone who's really mastering that build just yet. And to the point of NFTs, I think there's two bull cases for NFTs. One, which is the one that you referenced, which is access, right? And that is a more mundane, probably less exciting, but probably bigger TAM because you could replace the entire ticketing industry and OnlyFans and Patreon, like you'd mentioned, and info, right? The WAP guys can go and plug that in. So I think there's that. And then there's also the TAM of digital collectibles, which is, physical collectibles today have a total addressable market of about 600 billion. 1% of that 600 billion is digital, yet digital collectibles have a slew of pros that physical do not, right? They have no friction when buying or selling. They have no insurance issues. They have no storage issues. They have no inauthenticity issues, right? And so I think there's a gap in value to capture in terms of, in a $600 billion market, it's kind of like gold to, physical gold to digital gold, Bitcoin's captured 10% of it. I believe that digital collectibles are, whether you argue what side of the spectrum they're on, they're not 1%. They shouldn't have 1% of that market share. And so I think there's going to be value to capture between that spread.
Well, the other thing that stands out to me as just an observer is that I think when people are frustrated with the NFT market broadly, it's frustration with it's basically saying like, yes, 99% of attempts to create new IP are going to fall flat because it's really hard to create IP that is actually like, it's easy to create IP. It's hard to create valuable IP.
Yeah, and
right?
most people don't see the random scripts that are floating around Hollywood. Like 90% of scripts in Hollywood don't go anywhere.
Fall flat.
But 1% of them
crypto,
become Star Wars.
it's like they just hit the chain and they're people assume that there should be some value tied to them. And so I think it's just very possible that NFTs become bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's just a handful of really select projects that become these sort of centers for gravity and get developed in all these different ways. But you're not going to have 100,000 projects that each have movie offshoots, video game offshoots, physical toys attached to them. And that's exactly the way it happens in the real world, where people in Hollywood, like you said, will spend their entire life trying to develop a cartoon that actually turns into a franchise. And many people will try and fail. Yeah. And the difference with crypto is like the expectation is immediate value creation. And I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
The tokens, whether it's fungible or non-fungible, there's a superpower behind it. It's a kryptonite and it's a superpower depending on how you harness the power. But financial alignments can be your greatest weapon or your greatest weakness, right? And how you harness that, right? Like us being able at Pudgy to galvanize this group of 10,000 people to go and hit algorithms. Like, our big breakthrough at Pudgy was I told all of them that Walmart had turned us down, that we were going to go live on Amazon, and that I needed everybody to buy. And if they bought it, right, all at the same time, we would trigger Amazon algorithms, we'd be number one across all of these different categories. And that would give me a lot of leverage to go do a deal with a major retailer. Well, what happened was exactly that. We launched within, 30 minutes of launching on Amazon. I'm number one across basically every consumer product category, every toy category. And then Laura Rush, who was the head of merchandising at the time at Walmart, pinged us and said, we want to stock you. You got 3 months. We're going to put you in a pallet in the center of the store in 2,000 locations in Q4. And that was like the big paradigm shift for Pudgy, where people are like, oh shit, these kids, came out of nowhere and did it. And the rest is history. We've basically, carried that momentum up until where we are today. But that was our big breakthrough. And that was because I think of that alignment and that incentive. Everyone was incentivized to go and create this headline in this moment for Pudgy, at least the core community members who had quote unquote bags or collectibles or tokens within the ecosystem. And if you can harness that and if you can respect that, it can be a superpower. It can be your greatest kryptonite, as you've seen 100 times over. And there's, plenty of horror stories, which we won't get into.
Yeah. Bit of a wild card question, but I don't know if you saw OpenAI has a deal with Mattel to make a Chat GPT enabled Barbie potentially. We don't really know the shape of the deal. But
how many LLMs can fit in a Pudgy Penguin?
yeah.
That's what we want to know.
I mean,
can fit a lot of LLMs in this bad boy.
I mean, you're in some ways in the toy business, and what is the next generation of toys look like? What are you optimistic about? What will change? What technologies do you think will be integrated? What considerations will drive actual success instead of just like, yeah, we slapped AI on it. Like we tried that with every toaster having Bluetooth. Didn't really work out, but the Nest thermostat, pretty popular. So yeah, how does this play out?
It's a great question. I saw this coming 2 years ago, and I basically jumped for joy when I thought of it. And I told the guys, because for those who are not familiar, the toys that we sell have the QR codes. So it's not just like selling toys that are, IP related. We're actually putting NFTs in the hands of regular people, because you buy this toy, you scan this QR code, you redeem these NFTs through a gasless experience. So it's like a whole crypto funnel, which is basically our product, our physical toys. Yeah. But I jumped for joy because I was like, dude, what if these characters that you bought and these NFTs that you created then became like your AI homeworker helper, right? And this was an idea I had two years ago. And Lorenzo, our president, was like, dude, if there's a 0.01% chance this homeworker helper tells a kid to kill himself, it's not worth it because we'll get deshelved and it'll create a bunch of chaos. And we weren't, AI guys. But we actually are doing a toy with Curio, who recently raised pretty big over in the whole, AI crypto or AI, startup Twitter land, X.com land, and
that whole place.
Yeah, we're
familiar. We're familiar. We've dabbled.
That's great.
Yeah. Who's the musician that's involved with that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm super bullish on this. I have kids, and I mean, I was thinking about this with the Rabbit R1. Like, yes, the safety and security stuff is really, really important, but safety interpretability research and the ability to run an extra LLM, just filtering, is this a harmful response from the LLM? That seems to be getting better and better, and I'm pretty optimistic about having a watered down LLM that can't explain everything, but is really good at identifying plants and animals. That's going to be a big product for kids, I think. So.
The trick to CPG is all about providing value for the customer. Like Walmart will tell you, if you're trying to stock, like they're always optimizing for the best deal. And so my mind frame is like, how much bang for your buck can you get for this purchase? Well, if you can buy it and redeem some NFTs that could be worth some digital dollars, maybe you recoup your cost on the physical item and then it's a net free good. And then maybe you can go in and ask it questions, and now it's a value add. And so I think this stuff is just changing. It's a complete paradigm shift. I think no one's really ready for how I think the world is going to change. But in terms of a value add, you can plug in an LLM to a lot of physical products, just alpha for the room, and create a ton of value for your end consumer, which is ultimately your goal as an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Always appreciate your perspective.
We got to have you back when there's more breaking news, and we'll keep catching up with you. Good to see you, Luca. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, Luca. Have a good one.
Bye. Really quickly, Let me tell you about adquick.com. Out-of-home advertising made easy and measurable. Say goodbye to the headaches of out-of-home advertising. Only AdQuick combines technology, out-of-home expertise, and data to enable efficient, seamless ad buying across the globe. If you're going to be in Walmart, if you're going to be selling toys, you got to get on adquick.com. Anyway, our next guest is here, Julia. Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. I like the intro music.
Yes, welcome to the stream.
Welcome.
We are professional newscasters, as you know.
You're one of a handful of people in the entire world that has actually visited the Temple of Technology.
You've been into the Temple of Technology.
The capital of capital.
Yes,
that's right.
Give us the latest and greatest in your world. New piece in Palladium. What was the thesis? What inspired it? Take us through the high level of the piece.
Yeah, so something I've been thinking about for a while. It was actually sort of inspired by this freshman at Stanford who I was talking to in the library, very, very sweet girl. And she was like, "What are you doing post-grad?" And I said, "Well, I'm working for this magazine called Arena. They want to do books, so I'm going to be helping with that. I'm super excited." And she said, "That's a 1930-ass job." And I was like, "Well, why is it a 1930-ass job?" Well, it's like, most people are like consultants or software engineers, but you're making like this very real thing that's like you can touch. I was like, yeah, like maybe it is a 1930-ass job. I guess a lot of people in the 1930s didn't have jobs, but there were some people who were writing books and publishing books. So I was sort of thinking, it's like, well, how do we get to this point where it's like it is sort of like this weird thing for people to be doing something real and tangible. And then I think it's also just, I sort of feel like graduating from Stanford in 2025, in some ways, I'm like out on the last chopper out of Nom because like ChatGPT was only like super ubiquitous really my senior year. Like sometimes you just walk into the library and everyone had ChatGPT on their screens, and it was just you'd go to section and the section leader would be like, "Please, like I know it's really easy to use AI, but it would really make me sad if you used AI to write your weekly reading response." And then just sort of just like all these things that were just like you felt like you're more practicing like acting like a college student because just AI was just making a lot of the day-to-day like obsolete. And it's also just like there's a pretty good chance that like AI is a better writer than I am. There's a really high chance AI will be a better writer than I am in 5 years. And I think it's like, well, if what I wanted to be as a writer and that's going to be obsolete, or AI is going to be better than me, or like if my friends who want to be lawyers are just going to be replaced by Harvey, and my friends who want to be software engineers are going to be replaced by Cursor, like what does the future look like? And I think I was also guided by this conversation I had with a wonderful professor at Stanford, Jennifer Burns. She's in the history department. She has written biographies of Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand. I took a really great class with her in the fall called Thinking About Capitalism. And I had a lot of conversations with her just because I found her work really interesting. And she asked me, she's like, you're sort of like pretty like enmeshed in like the current, right-wing intellectual moment. Who is like the defining like economic thinker? And this was back in like October, November, and I was just totally stumped. Yeah. And when I sort of published the piece with Palladium, I sent it to her and I was like, this is sort of my answer to like what is the economic thought of Gen Z, or really of the 21st century, and it's economic nihilism.
It's nihilism. So yeah, are we cooked? Where are you most bearish? It seems like you're worried about a lot of different trends. Is capitalism cooked? Is democracy cooked? Is technology?
Well, I'd be curious to get
here?
an anecdotal job market kind of update. It sounds like we got breakfast last week, and you were saying that some of your classmates got offers from what was it, like Temu or something?
Oh, yeah.
So I think
work in like a warehouse, and they were all like super
Shein.
offended.
Yeah, it was Shein, and it was like become this like Shein warehouse manager. And I was like, actually, that sounds like a really interesting job. Like if I didn't have something lined up, maybe I would apply to be like a Shein warehouse manager. And there's this app called Fizz, which is sort of like Yik Yak 2.0. It's an anonymous forum for college students at particular campuses. And people got so mad that Shein like dared ask Stanford students to stoop to their level to become a warehouse manager. And I think it's sort of like a paradox, because Stanford students believe that they are entitled to certain jobs, and this is true of sort of like all Ivies or elite universities. but there are a lot of jobs that people aren't willing to do. And I sort of wrote in the article for Palladium, it's like the line used to be, well, the hardest part about Harvard is getting in. And now I would say the hardest part about Harvard is getting a job that your peers deem elite enough to not feel any like social backlash or to feel comfortable in the rat race. And I think it's Peter Turchin, who's this phenomenal historian, has written a lot about how conflict rises in societies when there are more elite aspirants than there are elite positions. And I think, especially as class sizes at these schools are expanding and the internet is democratizing access to education and democratizing access to power in some ways, I think that these schools are in a really tough place because they're it is no longer a guarantee that you can go to Stanford, you can go to Harvard, you can go to Yale and be upper middle class.
Is are there really not that many jobs at McKinsey, Bain, BCG, the Wall Street banks, the big tech companies, the PMs? It feels like we're hearing a lot of nervousness about job loss and not hiring, but it feels like also McKinsey's printing a bunch of money just writing slide decks about AI transformation in the Fortune 500, or has the actual shift in what is a high status job changed? And if it has, what is the high status job? Is it entrepreneurship now? Is it YC? Where are we sitting with that?
I think it's VC. I think it's entrepreneurship, just regards to whether
VC. They want to go straight to venture capital?
Yeah, this is the golden ticket.
Just kidding. We support venture capital.
Yeah.
I think anecdotally, it seems that big tech is like that used to sort of be like, okay, everyone told you to study CS, and if you study CS, you'll have like a 200K post grad salary, and now that's not really happening anymore.
Really?
Like, yeah, I think there's definitely a shortage of, or especially in like more big tech firms, which offer more security than like startups.
Sure.
It's a lot harder to get those positions now than 5 or 10 years ago.
Do you think that's more of a hangover from COVID and kind of Elon showing that he could run X at 1/5 the head count versus truly AI disruptive to like replacing workers?
I think it's probably both.
Okay.
I think there's like the zero well, there was a time in 2021 where just people were throwing money at anything that they could throw money at, and I think we're in very different times now. But I think I think about it less in terms of just like, oh, what's the market like now, and more in terms of like how has the social contract changed. And I think for a lot of elite college students, the sort of social contract was for a time like, okay, if you study like these 3 things, then post grad you will have like, and you don't fuck up in college, you'll have like pretty easy access to these really important high paying jobs. But I think we've seen now that it's like maybe a job at Goldman Sachs as an analyst isn't that important. You're just like changing font colors for 110 hours a week. But also just we're seeing underemployment rates in these sectors. I think the computer science underemployment rate is 1 in 6, which is insane considering that pretty much every authority figure I had from ages like 8 to 18 told me to major in computer science.
Yeah. Do you, Sam Altman wrote this post about the soft singularity, and his kind of thesis was that if you went back to 1930, they would think we all have fake jobs. And so we will maybe create new fake jobs. Are you optimistic about that at all?
Yeah, I don't think the fake jobs thing is necessarily going away. Like I'm in LA right now, that's where my parents live, and every third person is an influencer. So it's not hard for me to
Let's
see.
hear it for the influencers.
The hardworking content
hardworking
creators.
content creators.
It's very hard to go and get them
Slaves
more
to the
jobs
algo.
every day.
Yeah.
But I think what we're gonna see is just there's a lack of, or what we're sort of seeing, it's like there have been fake jobs for, I don't know, probably not eternity, but for like recent history. And what we're going to see is just the fake jobs. The work becomes more and more meaningless. It's like, I don't know what the fake jobs of like 5 years, 10 years from now are going to look like. But I think like a key thesis in my article was that like Gen Z is simultaneously like hyper careerist, but like there's no career at all. It's just sort of floating around from one job to the other. And because there's so much like hopping over from one company to another, one firm to the next, there's never really any like real expertise that's developed. And there's this shallowness in the work. I think it's like my parents, especially my dad, who just retired, he worked at one firm for like the vast majority of his career. He was like an expert in that field, and that wasn't anomalous for people of his generations of boomers at all. But I think now with Gen Z, it's just like, okay, you have one job for 6 months to 2 years, and then you move on to the next thing. And these big companies have like incentive structures built in, like McKinsey, that has search time. It's like, okay, well, after 1 year, we'll give you 6 weeks off so you can go and look for another job. And I think in sort of doing that, it's admitting that it's a fake job because it has no real tie to its employees and no real tie to their employees sticking around.
Yeah,
For
some of the new grad roles,
Fascinating.
at least the big three, they'll very much encourage you to go take 2 years off to do an MBA, which feels like, I don't know, it just feels odd to me to like lose an employee that you could be just nurturing internally and growing and stuff. What's the reaction on campus been to the big AI trade deals, these massive offers? Are people, most of those folks who are getting $100 million offers, they have PhDs, they're published papers. Maybe the new advice should be, don't just get a CS job and then a CS degree and then try and go work in big tech. Maybe it should say, actually stick in academia longer.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say just because like I'm not a CS major. In fact, I never took a single CS class at Stanford.
Yeah.
But I also think the people who go into CS PhD programs just like love the subject. And I think like the Stanford in particular is very good at getting people to major in computer science because they just teach the intro courses very, very well. But I think that's a very different demographic. The people you just sort of want to check out for college have like an easy-ish major that a lot of people around them do so they can have a cohort versus the people who are like, I'm really into systems. Like this thing is like, if you met someone at Stanford who was like a systems concentrator rather than an AI concentrator, they're like really in it. I don't really know.
Oh, you're a systems guy? Name every system.
This is symbolic systems?
No,
right?
Symbolic systems is a fake major. It's like the systems crack in the
Shots
CS.
fired.
I also did a fake major, so I'm not.
That's so funny.
not
It's a big
hardly
major.
one.
The realest major is art history. Higher employment than CS.
You know, symbolic systems is like literally every first employee at all the big tech companies who's worth like $100 million now. They're all.
Yeah, it's like they probably have a higher average income than the average comparative literature major, which is what we did. But.
Oh, well. Well, thank you for so much for stopping by. Jordan, do you have any other questions?
No, let's make this. You're our Gen Z correspondent.
Oh gosh. Okay.
We need you. We need you. I want more updates reporting on the Stanford class of 2025. Where are they landing?
Yeah. We got a fake job for you. Gen
Okay.
Z correspondent on a live stream.
Yes.
Amazing.
New
This is
fake
the
job.
fakest
New fake
job
job
ever.
alert.
New fake
I
job.
had a funny idea when I was editor of the
Please.
review, but never got around to doing it. And sort of
Yes.
one last thing was that we would compile the names and photos of everyone who got a job at Goldman Sachs, and it was
Okay.
just black and white portraits of all of them listed like vertically, and it was titled "Our Best and Brightest."
Oh.
So maybe we could do something like that for you guys.
There we go. Let's see it.
Love it.
Hey,
Well, very, very excited for you to be at Arena.
who's going to take
I'm
the companies
excited to
public,
see.
if not Goldman Sachs?
I don't know.
Who's going to issue the massive debt to back these corporate titans, if not Goldman Sachs?
Well, they are
Let's
our
give
best
them
and
their
brightest. They're doing important things.
They are. Anyway, this has been fantastic. Thank you
Fantastic.
so much for stopping by.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you
Cheers.
soon.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
Up next, we have Joel from Thomson Reuters coming in the studio. He was supposed to be on AI Day. He's buddies with Swix. It was introduced to me by Sean Swix, who's been on the show earlier. We're going to dig into how Thomson Reuters is using artificial intelligence and what's going on in the enterprise. Welcome to the stream, Joel. How are you doing today?
Guys, how's it going?
It's going great. Good to
What's
meet
happening?
you. Would you mind kicking us off with an introduction on yourself? And then I'd love to know a little bit about the shape of Thomson Reuters business. People are obviously familiar with the brand, but on a day-to-day basis, what's actually going on the technology side?
Yeah, you bet. So I've been at Thomson Reuters a few years. I joined via acquisition as a CTO of an AI company TR acquired a few years back, and have been with the company since then. I think a lot of people know Thomson Reuters from the news business. Obviously that's the most public-facing part of the business, but from a revenue perspective and a technology perspective, it's really, I would say, a relatively small percentage of what we do. We're one of the top 2 or 3 software providers in the world in the legal industry, in the tax industry, compliance, audit, and risk. So we really cover, I would say, a pretty broad expanse of the information services industry. For a lot of years, we were really seen as a content provider or an information provider within these businesses, but software, and in particular, like search, has been sort of a foundational piece of the technology that has kind of underpinned delivering that information to customers, again, across the sectors: legal, tax, compliance, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay, so walk me through of those verticals, which one is seeing the most acceleration from the current suite of AI tools? Which ones kind of maybe next up at bat and not really, the models aren't really having as much impact as you expected so far, but where are we getting the most leverage in AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you look at all of those industries, you wouldn't necessarily look at anyone and immediately say they are particularly eager to adopt technology or aggressive in that sense. But for the last 2.5 years, the legal industry has been on fire, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it. There's a ton of capital coming into to the legal tech industry in general.
Yeah.
But really, from the customers too, have been extremely hungry and eager to use this technology, and it's having profound impact on the way those professionals think about doing their work and operating their businesses and the underlying business models themselves. I think you're starting to see more progress being made in industries like tax, though. I think sort of the quantitative capabilities of the models kind of lagged the language capabilities of the models. But I think that's improved. But I also think if you look at like the tax or the audit industry, they're particularly workflow kind of heavy. And I think as agents have really taken off in the last 6 to 9 months, and the tool calling capabilities of the models have improved, it's really opened the door to deliver like real true automation and productivity with some of these agentic frameworks and reasoning-based models.
Yeah, talk to me about, I imagine you're not focused on pre-training a massive model to get to the frontier. You're probably a buyer of that capability, but we're seeing a lot of deals get done. OpenAI's fine-tuning models for clients above $10 million. They've even cheaper offerings. Palantir's doing fine-tuning work now. We just heard Thinking Machines, Mira Murati is doing some fine-tuning reinforcement learning for business-to-business applications. What are you a buyer of right now? What are you focused on building internal applications around? Where do you want the various pieces of the building blocks of a great artificial intelligence-enabled product to sit?
Yeah. This might be a little bit of a long-winded answer. I would say first and foremost, when we look at shipping product into the market quickly, we're certainly a buyer of these models, and we're close partners with Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and others in that regard. When those companies are working on their next versions of models, a lot of times they come to us to help them evaluate and test certain capabilities of the models, because the type of work that's done in the legal industry in particular is challenging. It's not a simple like rhetorical response. It's a deeper level of reasoning that happens in terms of the types of problems that we're solving. So I would say first and foremost, like we're buyers of the technology. We have done fine-tuning engagements with several of these providers. Super excited about the sort of RFT trend that may be coming with many of them in terms of being able to apply more RL-based methods to that fine-tuning. But we're also, I would say, builders in some sense. We're not pre-training models of the size of GPT-4 or Claude Sonnet, but we do engage in that. So about 1.5 years ago, we acquired a small company with a couple folks from DeepMind who have come in and really built up our deep learning expertise and deep learning training expertise within our team. We've got about 1.5 trillion tokens of our own proprietary content in legal and tax and news. And like I said, that's been sort of one of our defining assets for a long period of time.
Yeah.
As RL really becomes kind of the main mechanism for driving further improvements in the model, we see our talent, our 4,500 domain experts across legal and tax and otherwise, really being pivotal in that process of driving performance into the model. So we're certainly a buyer, but we're definitely trying to exercise the data and the content that we have proprietary to us, but also the human experts that we employ to drive that flywheel faster.
Can you give me some extra color on all the different value kind of on the table with one of these deals between a big company and a foundation model provider? Because it can seem so simple. It's like I'm buying an API, but there's actually a lot more to it. And we were talking about this in the context of Apple potentially partnering with Anthropic or OpenAI. And there's actually kind of an odd relationship there where if Apple's sending a bunch of users to ChatGPT, that could improve the model. And that could make their business stronger. They could wind up servicing ads in the responses like Google does. And you could wind up with a situation where, Google is paying Apple, not the other way around. You could see right. ChatGPT eventually paying Apple for the right to be on the Siri button. But in your business, you have over 1 trillion tokens. That's pretty valuable data. There's a question of, what value are you bringing to that side of the deal? And so how are you thinking about doing a great deal that sticks and is aligned economically over the long term with a foundation model provider?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer. And certainly you have to kind of like have some crystal ball to project out what the next 2 years are going to look like. And it's hard to project 2 weeks to do that effectively.
That's true.
So
we got one.
We got a crystal ball here. We actually have a crystal ball in the
that
studio for this exact reason.
Helps quite a bit.
It helps a lot.
Business.
Yeah, it's important.
I'll borrow that next time I'm out there. So, for us, I think, like I said, our people and our experts and the data that they create ultimately, I think, is sort of core to our identity and core to what we believe is valuable to us. And we try to really hold on to that and extract as much value from it into our IP as we can. I think where there's mutual benefit, like I said before, is we provide a lot of insight and direction to these foundation model providers in terms of like what the models are failing at, sort of what kind of capabilities. They have these public benchmarks that say, every week one model is better than the other, but they don't really represent the real world. And in particular, they don't represent the real world of like how professionals do work on a day-to-day basis. And we spend a tremendous amount of time building real world evaluations into those kinds of things. And not only that, but we spend a tremendous amount of time and energy grading and evaluating those on like real world rubrics for how a lawyer would interpret this. So it's not like it's a right or wrong answer. It's is it helpful? Is it harmful in some way to a lawyer? These are types of things that like require a tremendous amount of just domain understanding to do well. And so that insight's super valuable to the foundation model providers to understand how they need to adjust their data sets. And it benefits us on the flip side because we get more performant models out the back end that are better suited for our tasks.
How much time are you guys spending just on preventing hallucinations when you talk about domains like law and tax? It's not uncommon for a lawyer or a tax attorney to hallucinate themselves, put the wrong number somewhere, have the right, but usually there's, hopefully checks and balances in terms of someone else reviewing it, the client reviewing it, making sure that it's getting to the right place. But that feels like one of the bigger issues kind of holding back LLMs from, unlocking the full value. So I imagine it's a big focus for you guys, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I mean, like, I think that's one of the core things that we do, and you're right that hallucinations existed before AI was involved here, and they exist now, and they, no matter how good these models will get, they will exist in the future. I think there's some element of like um, uh, that will be the fact. I mean, foundationally, the way the models operate, like it is a propensity and it can happen. But we spend a lot of time trying to build guardrails, trying to build methodologies to prevent that, or at least mitigate it in as many ways as we can. I would say this is where, though, the UX of the applications really becomes like more and more critical. Like creating the environment where a lawyer like knows what they need to validate, knows how to do that validation, and can do it quickly and efficiently so that they're still saving time in whatever they're doing, I think is a critical part of the design of the applications and how they operate. And as much time as we spend on the science side trying to build algorithms that prevent that, we spend just as much time on the design side trying to make sure we build experiences that allow lawyers to build that confidence and trust that they need.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll have to have you back when there's more news from your world. And we hope you have a great day, and have a
thank you for
happy
joining.
July 4th, too.
Yeah,
Thanks,
appreciate the
We'll
insights.
talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Jordy, how did you sleep last night? I think you might have me beat. I was a little rougher. I got an 81. But how did you do? Go to 8sleep.com/TBPN. Get a pod 5.
Actually, unbelievable.
Did I beat you? Did I beat you? Play the sound
what
effect.
did you
You know the
What did you
reward
get?
I get. 81. What did you
You're
get?
not
80?
gonna believe it. 52.
52. Oh my God. Wow.
I said.
For what it's worth, you have put on a fantastic performance this show. I would have guessed 99. I thought you were locked in. I think you've done fantastically this show.
I like need to hire a new head coach. I'm gonna like have a call.
Well, we got to have Brian Johnson back on the show. He said he's down to come in the studio. He can give us a coach. We'll bring Andrew Huberman back too. Andrew Huberman was saying there's a drug that can help you sleep better, or something like that.
I might need to get on PEDs to actually beat you.
But then we're gonna have to drug test, because if you're cheating and I'm natty sleeping, this is not gonna fly.
We sleep. We focus on our sleep to make the show better.
We do.
We should be able to do any type of
and there's no better place to sleep than a Wander if you're on vacation. Find your happy place. Book a Wander with inspiring views, hotel grade amenities, dreamy beds, top tier cleaning, and 24/7 concierge service. It's a vacation home, but better.
We are going to be launching a video of us in a Wander.
Get ready.
Get ready for that. I can't wait.
Get ready. We have our next guest coming into the studio. I'm going to let you take the intro.
Mackenzie
I will be
coming
back
in from
just a
Ambrook, announcing some news. What's going on? Welcome to the studio.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Quick intro on yourself and the company, and then let's get into the news.
Okay, sweet. So I'm Mackenzie. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Ambrook. Our mission is to help American family-run businesses become more profitable and resilient. And the way that we do that is we're starting in agriculture, so building out financial management software, so accounting, like the full bundle, so accounting, payments, banking, cards for America's farmers and ranchers.
How did you land on this idea? Where did it all start?
Yeah, it was a pretty winding path, but we actually started during the pandemic, helping a lot of producers try to get access to working capital. And if you talk to a lot of producers about their problems and sort of what they think software can help with, it almost always has to do with all the way up the Maslow's hierarchy. So, getting access to capital to take more risk. But the more that we dug into it, we helped a couple thousand producers access a couple million during the pandemic. But when you really dig into it, it's just kind of gets down to like accounting and financial record keeping. Like it's just accounting all the way down.
Non-existent. Was one of the issues you're like trying to underwrite a business, but they're like, well, I have this piece of paper and I have this piece of paper and maybe they have a QuickBooks
it's a
account.
huge range, like you can imagine. But a lot of you have farmers that are running multi-million-dollar businesses on pen and paper.
Yeah.
And of course you have folks who are also using standard S&B accounting software too. But the real issue is just that farming is actually so complicated. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been on a dairy or how to do FP&A.
I don't know if you guys have ever farmed.
Not a lot of
I-
content farming.
Content
but,
farming.
No,
have some
I
tomatoes in my
grew up
backyard.
I grew up in the country, in wine country, so
Yeah.
I had some exposure. I also have some portfolio companies that have some end farms as customers. So
Yeah.
I feel like I've had some exposure, but certainly not an expert. But from my understanding, I think that the challenge is, one, you're actually on a farm, and historically some farm, maybe I'm sure there's a lot of like Starlink adoption, which maybe is a
Yeah, we've talked to some
catalyst.
farmers about that.
But at the same time, you're not at a desktop computer, so the explosion of mobile helped in farming because you could be
Yeah.
updating a database or even sending an email. But all of that is like relatively new, and I don't think the like big accounting software providers of the world were necessarily like actually on the ground talking with farmers, being like, what software do you want to run your business?
Totally. Yeah. We ended up, so a lot of accounting and FP&A software is built for like office workers. So it's built as if they assume that you're going to be in an office, 8 hours a day. And we actually ended up flipping that very early on and building workflows that were built for folks who spend more time in the field than in the office. And so from the very beginning, we had like sort of cross-platform across mobile and desktop, like sort of web-based. But over 50% of our users use the mobile app as their primary device to do pretty complex bookkeeping, accounting, payments, receipt management, and understanding their analytics and reports. And I think that speaks to kind of what you were talking about there.
How
Yeah.
consolidated is the industry? I feel like there's this narrative of like private equity has rolled up every farm, and there's like a few mega farms, and the certain like billionaires own all the farmland in America. But then at the same time, it seems like there's still, like, I personally know folks who have family farms that are still in this like single digit million, maybe tens of millions of dollars business. Like they're definitely SMB.
So there's a little under 2 million farms in the US, and only something like 12 to 16,000 of them do more than 5 million a year in annual
So
sales.
it's very long tail. Yeah. Okay.
So super long tail.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the market opportunity for you. Not
Awesome.
exactly the search
Talk
engine
about
market.
the new financing you guys announced today, and maybe what was the inflection point that made this round kind of possible?
Yeah, totally. So we just announced 26.1 million Series A.
Let's go.
Who's it from?
So it's led by Josh at Thrive and Dylan Field at Field Ventures.
Congratulations. He's on a tear today.
Our guys.
He got a
Our
trade deal
guys.
done. He got a
It's
new
been a
deal.
busy day for
Thrive.
all three of you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, busy deal for Dylan too.
yeah, I don't even think you caught this, but they released S1 just like an hour
Oh
ago.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, you were gonna
more
put that
breaking
there.
news. But anyways, back to Ambrook.
No, super. So the inflection point for us was that we just thought, I think once we realized that we actually did need to, because I mentioned earlier that we at first were just trying to solve this paperwork problem with getting access to working capital. And once we realized we actually had to just rebuild QuickBooks from the ground up, that is a long build.
Non-trivial.
So non-trivial. And so we ended up sitting with a group of pilot customers, a couple dozen farms across the US for about 2.5 years before we ended up releasing it and actually starting to market it more to the public. And so it wasn't until last year that we launched, and early last year, and that growth basically catalyzed this round. So
that's awesome. And is the goal for working capital to still be a core part of the business in the long run, but you just had to solve the underlying kind of ledger first?
Yeah, totally. And actually, what pushed me to this decision too was just I ended up talking to a lot of these big ag tech players that a lot of the executives there that were doing a lot of ag financing, and I asked them whether or not they could standardize it by pulling on QuickBooks, and they just said it was a garbage in, garbage out problem. And so they couldn't even they themselves were going in and doing pretty specialized underwriting that was one-off basically per operation. And I figured if we were going to have any shot at getting a lot of these folks, our customers, access to not just commoditized financing, because a lot of ag bankers actually drive to the farm to put together
boots
a
on the
farmer's
ground.
balance sheet.
We need boots on the ground.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, which is, I mean, the faith-based relationships are really important, but what the cost is that it means that more capital can't flow into this ecosystem, right? And it's really a lot harder to do really interesting niche financing as well if you don't have that level of standardization. And so a lot of what Ambrook has been focused on is first just solving producers' problems. So making it easier to file taxes, making it easier to manage receipts. But now what we're starting to do is a lot of our producers, for example, are for the first time understanding their managerial costs in real time and able to make a decision. Like one of our producers, realized that actually replacement heifers was a much more profitable enterprise than his hay enterprise, and being able to make those decisions in real time and either, just because hay equipment is pretty expensive. And so he basically needed to increase the amount of income that was flowing through the hay enterprise to offset the cost, or essentially, stop growing his own hay and instead buy it. And those are the types of decisions that actually in real time affect profitability in the long run and build a more resilient operation. And that's just not something that, again, it's, these farms are pretty complex. It's one of the only industries where oftentimes for manufacturing, you're usually assembling things. Actually, with agriculture, you're disassembling it. So like, what are the cogs on that?
It's exciting because to me, it's like you can level the playing field, and like if you're a farm and you don't have access to capital in the way that these big, mega corporations have like really efficiently run businesses, plenty of access to capital because they're running sophisticated financial operations, it's just so much harder to compete. And with a business like farming, where I think a lot of, there's a bunch of different subcategories, but so much of the revenue comes in waves seasonally based on harvests and things like that. And so if you're getting paid a couple times a year and you can't really have consistent access to capital, it's like very challenging to actually run a business and stay in business and not be forced to just sell your land or do something else. So it's very exciting.
Totally. There's a huge, the big trend that everyone talks about in ag is just the generational transition, right? Like 70% of land is supposed to change hands in the next 10, 15 years. The average age of a farmer in the United States is 57, 58. It's only increasing, right? And so a lot of these operations are looking at generational transitions, and there's a knowledge gap there as well, because if everything is if everyone's in someone's head about how all the finances work and how the operation runs, right? Like that's fine, but what happens when you need to pass on to the next generation? And so a lot of what we think about is democratizing access to that knowledge, democratizing access to capital, to knowledge, right? I think this is also our thesis on AI, which is AI should actually be the great, it should be actually the democratizing wave that the computing revolution promised, but ended up just actually hollowing out the middle class. I think you're actually seeing that come back in a real way, where you're able to tap in, folks who don't necessarily have, specialized skill sets or like have are a CPA or something, can actually understand more about their books in real time. And don't need to necessarily have that background.
You can get at least access to the intelligence of the average McKinsey associate, but for the cost of Ambrook, you don't have to go hire McKinsey. So
that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, super exciting. Thanks for coming on the show, and come back on when you have news.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. The breaking news, of course, is that Figma has publicly filed their S1 with the SEC
what's
today.
This on the printer cam?
Oh, is the printer?
The printer's going.
It's going.
See it. Okay.
They
don't
have
touch it.
applied to list
out. Look at this. Oh, don't. There we go.
Boom.
Boom.
They have applied to list on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol FIG.
Love it.
It's got a
That's
great ring to
ticker.
it. FIG.
Congratulations.
The New York Stock Exchange, one of the best stock exchanges, if you ask me. Preliminary. Nice hit, Gon. John, I called you Gon. Gong. Anyways, the other interesting data point, Arthur Rock called this out. There's 70 million held in Bitcoin ETFs on the balance sheet, with board approval for another 30 million BTC purchased via USDC.
Whoa,
so
Dylan.
A little bit of a BTC treasury action going on.
That's wild.
What else?
I would not have expected that. He just was
also
stacking sats.
Bill McDermott, who was formerly at Xerox, transformed SAP, and is now leading ServiceNow, is joining Figma's board of directors.
Congratulations.
Dylan
Trade
says,
deal.
Bill is a legend. In addition to his wisdom, I especially appreciate his humility and authenticity. So great addition to Figma's board. And
Well, you're heading to the New York Stock
we'll
Exchange.
have to have somebody
You got to
on.
get a watch on Bezel. Go to getbezel.com. Your Bezel
John is
concierge
relentless.
is available now to source you any watch on the planet. Seriously, any watch. Yes, this is very good news. Should we run through some timeline, get out of here? What do you
Let's do
think?
some timeline. Let's do some timeline.
We got another trade deal, another massive trade deal. Jeff Bercovici is joining the Wall Street Journal. Starting July 28th, he'll be heading up Wall Street Journal's San Francisco team as Deputy Tech and Media Editor. Absolutely massive news. Congratulations to Jeff on the trade deal. We got another
absolute
trade
dog.
deal that we posted on the timeline. Same is moving to Thrive Holdings to build exceptional businesses designed to compound over many decades.
Massive signing from Thrive.
Massive
our friends
signing.
over at Thrive. I mean, we're
Probably
hearing
maxed
the
out
rumors.
contract.
Maxed out, probably 4 years.
Yep.
Guessing a 1-year cliff, but we'll wait for more details. A veteran of Ramp, an
Yep.
absolute dog. Congratulations, Samantha.
And in other news, Public, our sponsor, has the IRA triple play here, 1% match, plus 1% match, plus 1% match. That's 3%. So go check it out at public.com.
The absolute dogs over at Public. Do it again.
Yes.
Will Manitis has a new law. New law alert. We got a new law.
Oh, he's coining.
He's coining.
Citadel's law, any industry with sufficiently high stakes will end up mirroring the culture of hedge funds. Massive cash comp for top performers, bid away dynamics where entire teams walk together, extreme litigation of non-competes, hard work 24/7 culture, short tenures. We are at most 6 months away from PE-style midnight recruiting coming to AI, at most 12 months away from undergraduates pre-interviewing for the job they want after a 2-year stint at a frontier lab because they even start. There's a
Will's just
incredible
rambling now.
Hawaii Sagaponic pair trade here. It's fun to be aghast when Balyasny or whoever pays $100 million to bring some PM an unknown quantity of their loyalists. That's portfolio manager, not product manager.
My favorite is when portfolio managers have their
squad.
No. On the LinkedIn gap where they'll add like,
Oh,
I'm gardening.
gardening.
And it's like gardening for
Yeah,
6
because they
months. or
legally
a
couldn't
year.
go work at another hedge fund after a 6-month cool down, of course, over. But this is actually a much purer expression of the kind of thing that is being attempted in the Wong FB Nikita Z deal. But this is actually much purer expression. At the margin, I think makes the capital environment for funding independent big AI things much worse. Not worth underwriting a team if you know they can do R&D on your dollar and then walk. In the same way, my sense is fund staking terms got worse, not better post-pod shop. He's getting in the weeds there, but it's a fun post.
Deep cut, but
but this is the long-term impact of the AI talent wars.
I do think it's accurate to say that a lot of people over the last 24 hours have been saying, oh, nerds are being treated like athletes. I would just say this is AI researchers being treated like PMs in the hedge fund world.
Yep, totally.
So.
And then the last piece of breaking news, I think you mentioned this briefly yesterday, but Andreessen Horowitz is back in the mix to acquire TikTok, joining Oracle and Blackstone in talks to buy the United States business. That'd be fantastic.
I would love to see that.
Be great. Well,
would be absolutely fantastic.
The end of the show, folks. Please leave us 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and stay tuned for tomorrow's show.
If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it on the show. You can put anything you want in there. You can put an ad for your business or your venture fund.
And we'll read it on the show.